An entitled psycho school teacher loudly brags that she intentionally mistreats her kids in her classroom, stating that she enjoys their suffering and that she wants them to be miserable in the same way that she was when she was younger. But after hearing this for far too long, I decided to get some revenge by taking this Karen down in a way that she truly will never forget. Here's what happened. So we've all had those teachers that take their problems out on us, and this story is how I indirectly shamed one of the worst I've publicly encountered. A few years back, I was traveling with my family and we were taking a bus to our next stop. My mom, an amazing teacher of over 20 years, was sitting next to me, calmly reading and not paying much attention. There was a mother and daughter pair seated directly behind us, probably in their mid-50s and late 20s. My phone battery was already low and I didn't want it to die, so I was staring out the window people watching. It's then that I couldn't help but overhear the loud conversation between the ladies behind me, and I soon realized that they were both teachers. While the daughter seemed like a decent person, the mother was ranting about how much she hated her students and how happy it made her to torture them. For context, I guess the kids were around 12 to 13 years old. For example, if you turn in anything, namely a test, homework, or classwork, even 1 second late, regardless of the reason, she would only give 70% as the maximum grade that you could get. Apparently she wanted it lower, but administration would get suspicious. And if you ask a question she doesn't like, you get shamed in front of the entire class. She also had a running list on the wall tracking how many homework assignments each student missed, with snarky comments coming along with them. And of course, she would hide it when administration came by. Also, one student missed a few weeks of classes for a death in the family, and she told the whole school it was because he's dramatic and lazy. She also admitted to slapping at least 7 students and was only caught once, while also instigating fights in student friend groups just for entertainment. Now, I heard all of this for over a 45-minute period, and the mother seemed so disgustingly proud. The daughter kept trying to tell her how wrong it was to treat students like that, but the mom just laughed and called her stupid and naive. This idiot talked about how school was a nightmare for her growing up, so she wants these kids to suffer just as much, if not more. She even said it was the best kind of therapy. Now, I was appalled to say the least. Who in the world treats kids like that and then insults their actual child when called out for it? I never heard names or identifiers to report it officially, so I started thinking, and for once in my life, I had an idea that would make my usual problem of complaining the perfect solution for this situation. And it's then that I decided to set it in motion. So I texted my mom something along the lines of, "The woman behind us is a teacher and she is a jerk. I'm gonna go on a rant and I need you to go along with it. Close your book when you're ready." As soon as she saw the text message, she looked at me and smiled. It was time. I then started going on a long, loud rant about a professor at my college that treated the students so poorly. I then listed examples similar to the one this jerk said, with minor tweaks and changes, all the while talking about how much of a negative impact it had on us personally and academically. I whined about how she takes her hate and insecurities out on us and how miserable everybody is because she's just an overgrown bully on a power trip. I mentioned that even the other professors avoid her because they're so disgusted by how she treats us. I then ended it by saying I love my amazing teacher mom, and I know she would never do any of those things, because what kind of loser takes out their frustration on kids? And you know what? My mom played along perfectly, and we changed the subject right after that. And you know what? I didn't hear a peep from behind us the rest of the ride. It was amazing to loudly complain about her in this metaphorical way. All the things she was proud of, I exposed as awful things to do. And you know what? They really were. And by the way, this was all on a crowded bus with at least an hour left to our destination. My mom was impressed when she got the details later, and I wanted to say something to the daughter afterwards, but I felt bad that she got caught in the crossfire. But when the bus finally arrived, they shuffled off with incredible speed, leading me to believe that they definitely learned their lesson. Oh, I love this so much because I cannot stand teachers who do this. And yes, the original poster's correct. I've run into nightmare teachers like this before, and it's one of those where you can't prove it, but you know for a fact they're taking out their problems on you. And they're only acting this way because they want to make your life miserable because they're miserable. So I guess misery really does love company. That is so annoying. So good for you for getting back at them and literally putting them in their place, because people who treat kids like that are literally the worst people on planet Earth. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled mother is convinced that my dead grandfather still owes her $100. And even though I've tried to argue this point to this woman over and over again, she still refuses to listen to reason. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, my mother is an all-around wonderful woman. But unfortunately, that doesn't keep her from being a hard-headed, absolute jerk who's creating stupid arguments and sticking to her way or the highway no matter how many times you explain that she might be wrong. Well, she passed passed that trait on to me, which means we butt heads every once in a while, and this is one of those situations. Back in 2004, my parents announced their second pregnancy. My paternal grandfather, we will call Bob, had 5 grandsons at this point, spread across 3 kids. Since this would be the last baby of the generation, he pulled my mom aside and told her that he would give her $100 if she could give him his first granddaughter. And obviously, if she was going to give birth anyways, it was a done deal. Well, fast forward and my mom gives birth to me and my twin sisters, 2 fraternal baby girls. The first time my grandfather visits her and his new granddaughters, he gives my mom a shiny $100 bill, but she then gets offended and tells him that this wasn't what they agreed upon. She gave him 2 granddaughters, so surely that means that he owes her $200 instead of the original $100, because in her mind, she had done double the work. And from here, the argument kind of gets blurry, because this story was recounted by my mom, which is a biased commentary to say the least, and I only ever heard her side of the argument. I was told that they bickered about it until the day he died when I was about 4 years old, and when I grew old enough to understand the situation, I began arguing with my mom on behalf of my grandfather. Now, here's how I see it. The deal was laid out. You are currently pregnant, and if this is my first granddaughter, I'll give you $100, meaning that her end of the deal was delivered when she delivered the first granddaughter, and his obligations were fulfilled when he, true to his word, gave her the $100 bill. Basically, it stops and starts at the first granddaughter. Well, regardless, my mom swears up and down to this day, nearly 20 years later, that her father-in-law stiffed her years ago, and she just cannot get over it. And every time I think I've argued her into the ground in front of others, and she somehow agrees that I'm right, the next time it comes up, she acts like the previous discussion never happened, and suddenly the argument begins again. My current argument is that because I'm now a trans man, and he only ever had 1 granddaughter, meaning my sister, my mom was still compensated the correct amount for the 1 girl she delivered. So I think that I win. Now, I don't remember my granddad, but he seemed like a good guy, and I'm proud that he stuck it to my mom until she couldn't reach him anymore. And now I'm happily carrying on his legacy of not letting my mom get away with any more for dumb ideas. Okay, it sounds like your mom is just one of those people who want to argue for the sake of argument. Because the fact that she's so bent out of shape over this, and she's trying to be like, man, I just can never let this go. He owes me $100. Like, seriously, that's so stupid and petty, it's honestly just not even funny. Like, the guy's dead and gone, and you still want $100 out of his pocket? Like, seriously, this is so weird. And truly, I can't stand dealing with people like this, because it really seems like there's no winning or having any conversation with them. They're always going to try and argue their point, even if they're wrong. And that, in my opinion, is not even worth entertaining. Am I the jerk for walking out of a restaurant after my sister kept making rude remarks and trying to speak on my behalf? Because right now, my parents are saying that I shouldn't have left. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my sister and I never really had the best relationship growing up. I've always tried to keep it civil, but she wouldn't and has always been rude to me and would try to speak on my behalf as if she's my lawyer. Now, to make things relevant, I'm on the spectrum. She will constantly convince me to say no whenever others ask me a question, tell me to shut up whenever I talk to my friends or anyone that wanted to have a conversation with me, or my sister will shake her head no, either because she disapproves of something, or she simply wants me to shut up. Well, this past weekend, my parents asked me and my sister to meet with them at a restaurant for dinner, as we didn't see each other in weeks, and my parents both wanted to treat us. We met in the restaurant and everything went well until it was time to order. Now, I'm not much of an eater, so I wanted to order some of the appetizers, but my parents encouraged me to buy an entree so I can at least have some of the food to take home if I don't finish. Now, I thought about getting it, but I saw my sister just shaking her head. I asked her what her issue was, and she said that she knows I don't need the entree, and therefore I shouldn't waste my money or food. My parents told her that this isn't her concern, and that I can order for myself. So I ordered the entree that I liked, and when our food came, my sister was glaring at me the entire time. Well, I eventually finished my food, and I guess I didn't really need to take any leftovers home since they were all gone. When asked if we wanted dessert, my dad asked me if I would like some, and I said that I was full, but my dad said he would want me to at least take something home, so I ordered a cheesecake. And that was when my sister snapped at me. She called me a spoiled brat for wasting food and our father's money, while also asking me, well, why do you even need a dessert? My dad told my sister to calm down and said that she can get dessert too. Well, my sister got even more angry and called my dad names and how I'm wasting money. But the thing is, I make my own money, so I don't know what her issue was. Now, I didn't want to be around her, so I just got up and then I left. My parents begged me to stay as we planned to just get coffee somewhere else afterwards, but I declined. I couldn't stay if my sister was gonna continue to be there, and I even changed my mind on dessert. When I got home, I've gotten a couple of calls from my parents apologizing on my sister's behalf, and my mom said I shouldn't have walked out and let my sister get the better of me. She tends to defend my sister a lot, so I told her she needed to weigh wake up and understand how my sister has always tried to control me for reasons I simply cannot understand. So right now, I really need to know, am I the jerk for walking out in the way that I did? Because right now, I really don't know what to do. No, I don't think you're the jerk, but also I think you need to understand that your parents may be more on your side than you realize. You may think that your parents are defending your sister in some kind of way, but from the sounds of it, especially based on what you described, they really did come to bat for you in the best way that they could. For reference, the original poster is 26 and their sister is 24. So these are full-grown adults that we're talking about. And from the dinner that you described, it really seems like your parents were like, wait a second, you can't talk to the original poster like that. And they even begged you to come back and not let your sister get under your skin. Because seriously, her opinion of you does not matter. She can shake her head and say, wow, you're wasting money and all this other crap, but that doesn't mean anything. Just because she controlled your life as a kid doesn't mean that can happen as an adult. So no, you're not the jerk for walking out, but I really do think that your parents are on your side way more than you might realize. Because it does not sound like they endorse your sister's behavior in the slightest, and I'm sure they just want the best for you in the best way possible. Am I the jerk for not passing it on at the food court by buying someone else's food all because the person ahead of me bought mine? Because right now I feel really guilty for not keeping it going, and at this point I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I was standing in a long line at a food cart, waiting for a popcorn refill, and the gentleman ahead of me gave his order and then said, and whatever this guy wants, directing his generous smile my way. I immediately protested and said, sir, you don't need to pay for mine. But he said that he wanted to, but I didn't want it to be a thing, so I thanked him. Then he looked me in the eye and expectantly said, pass it on. He then smiled again and looked at the long line behind me before turning to get his order. I got my refill of popcorn and said thank you again, and he looked so disappointed that I left instead of saying, I'll pay for the guy behind me. He then stopped me and seriously said, make sure you pass it on someday. And I repeated the words of someone I once tried to pay back. I said, pay it forward. That's what it's all about. I then thanked him and then I escaped. But here's the thing. I came for the cheapest thing on the menu. Popcorn is like what, $2? And there was a large family behind me, and most of the people were coming in big groups for alcohol. So sure, I might have gotten free popcorn and I appreciate the gesture, but I might then would have had to shell out $50 for beer for a bunch of randoms. And also, I've never liked the whole pass it on thing. It's generous of the first person, and then the last person feels like a freebie. But as is often said here, all the middle people get their prices randomized, and it's literally a headache for the workers. So I will pay it forward sometime, and I definitely have in the past, but I didn't play along in the moment. And I could tell that the man felt his grand gesture was completely wasted. So seriously, am I the jerk for not going along with this weird scheme? Because right now I feel a little bit guilty. No, I don't think you're the jerk at all, because I completely agree with you. For starters, that guy was only doing that to try and look good in front of other people and be like, oh yeah, look at what I did. This is so nice of me. And it's like, sure, that's fantastic. That really is fine. But the fact that he basically tried to make you also join in on his weird charity that you never signed up for, like that's dumb, and I don't blame you for being like, okay, thanks, see you later. Because seriously, that's obnoxious. And the fact that he was basically trying to like guilt trip you into doing that is also incredibly annoying. So no, you're not the jerk here, because just like you, I think this kind of stuff is super stupid and I really don't like it. Am I the jerk for refusing to help out my dad's ex-wife with rent after his passing away, even though she is struggling and my half-brother is still a minor? Because right now, I feel like I'm being guilt-tripped hard from every angle, and I really now don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so here's the situation. My dad passed away 3.5 years ago when my half-brother was 11 years old. My dad and his ex-wife had been separated for about 5 years before his death, but they weren't legally divorced. During that time, they didn't really have much contact, and she didn't join any family gatherings or events. Even during the funeral, she wasn't there, where my aunt, my grandma, and I were, and I just didn't have a close relationship with her. My dad was also struggling financially, and he didn't leave anything behind apart from a small boat that he had purchased in my name, which I sold and put the money aside for my brother's future and started paying towards his needs, such as education fees and monthly allowances for him. My dad had still been supporting my half-brother's mom financially, even though they weren't living together, and I only had to communicate with her a few times after his passing about my brother's expenses. Now here's where things get tricky. My aunt has been paying the rent for my dad's ex-wife and my half-brother for the past 3.5 years, as my dad's ex-wife claims to be struggling financially. She works full-time but also receives a pension through my dad. Now, the landlord wants them to move out, and my aunt, who's been helping with rent all this time, is not in a position to pay for the rent in the future apartment. My dad's ex-wife is now asking me for help with rent, claiming that she is still struggling. And honestly, I'm conflicted. I don't have a strong relationship with her, and I don't feel it's my responsibility to help her out with rent, especially when I'm already helping my brother. I've made it clear that I can't help her with the rent, but she is persistent and threatening me that she'll tell my brother that I'm this bad sister who's not helping him out with their housing situation situation, and she told me if I'm not helping out with rent, I shouldn't act like a good sister and help out on anything else as well. I feel like it's not fair that I should take on this burden when I'm already looking out for my brother's well-being, and especially when my aunt has already been helping her all this time. My primary focus is on my brother's future, and I just don't want to take on any more responsibilities that aren't my own. I also want to mention that while my dad's financially supported my dad's ex-wife when they were separated, their relationship was strained, and I never felt close to her. I'm struggling with whether I'm being unreasonable for not helping her, even though she's in a tough situation. So seriously, am I the jerk here? Because right now I don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk for one reason only, and that's the fact that she's trying to guilt trip you using your half-brother. That, in my opinion, is like the kiss of death, and that would be the moment I would never help her with anything again. Seriously, the fact that she's trying to be like, oh, if you don't help us out, I'm gonna tell your brother that you're a bad sister. And it's like, wait a second, did you really just give me an ultimatum? Are you really gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna ruin this relationship you have? And it's like, nope, this is probably how you treated my dad when he was alive. This is not okay, and I'm not gonna play into this crap. So no, you're definitely not the jerk. This situation is so toxic it's not even funny, because the fact that she would bring your brother into this, in my opinion, shows how bad of a person she truly is. Am I the jerk for asking my friend to pay for damages to my expensive leather bag after he dumps literally a full cup of coffee all over it, staining it in a way that has completely ruined it? Because right now he's saying it's not his responsibility and that accidents happen. But at this point, I'm still incredibly pissed off and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I own a high-end leather briefcase that I saved up for months to buy. It's a $1,800 briefcase, and it was a gift I made to myself after saving money for over a year, and I've always been super careful with it. A few days ago, I was hanging out with my friend and he asked to see it, so I handed it over, and while he was looking at it, he accidentally spilled a full cup of coffee on it. I immediately tried to wipe it off, but the coffee soaked into the leather and left a huge stain, and I was devastated. This bag cost me $1,800, and I've only had it for a few months. I took it to a professional cleaner, and they said it'll cost around $300 to remove the stain, but there's no guarantee the stain will completely come out. I told my friend I was upset, and I asked if he'd be willing to help cover the cost of the repairs. He then apologized but said it was just an accident and that I shouldn't expect him to pay for something so expensive. Now, I get that accidents happen, but this feels like a big deal to me. I offered to split the cost, but he refused, saying it's not his responsibility. Now, I feel like he should at least contribute something, but now he's acting like I'm being unreasonable. So am I the jerk for asking my friend to pay for the damages to my bag? Because at this point, I'm still incredibly pissed off. No, you're not the jerk at all. This guy ruined your bag. This thing cost you nearly $2,000. Like, my God, that's an expensive bag. And this guy clumsily dumped a full cup of coffee all over it. Like, at that point, yeah, this is your fault and you need to fix it. So no, you're not the jerk for asking, because this guy absolutely is at fault. And the fact that he's not willing to help out with any of the repairs, in my opinion, shows how bad of a friend he truly is. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay rent to my father after he demands over $450 a month from me, despite the fact that I'm 16 years old and still in high school? Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of backstory, my mother married my stepfather when I was only 3 years old. My biological father was never in the picture, so I've always considered him to be my biological father. He always treated me fairly. However, I never got the same treatment as his biological children. And honestly, I understand it though. We never had a blood-bound relationship. He would sometimes take me out for dinner with him and his daughters, but that was the extent of our relationship besides family events. Now, I'm a 16-year-old female and recently I got a job. It's only part-time, but it allows me to get out of the house more. I've been working for over a month now, and my mother and father sat me down today for a conversation. My father started off by saying, "We want you to understand the responsibilities of becoming an adult, so we are enforcing a new rule." And I thought it would be something similar to the ones we have. Some rules we have are that I have to pay for everything now that I have a job, which totals to about $340 a month. And that includes paying for my 3 cats, my phone bills, my car insurance, any food I want from the store, and monthly supplies. Now, I don't mind paying for these items, and some of them were my idea in the first place, but it's here that my father stated he wanted me to begin paying him $450 a month for rent. He backed up his statement by saying that this would help me to become responsible with my spending habits, because in his words, I spend too much money. Well, my mother agreed with him, stating that if I wanted to continue all the luxury I had in the household, I would need to pay rent. And when they said that, I was appalled to say the least. I never thought I would have to pay rent, especially if it's over half my paycheck. For a while, I stared at them confused, but then I began to ask questions, to which they repeated the same things said above. I told them that my 18-year-old sister never had to pay rent, and she still lives at home. My father just replied and said, "Well, that's because she never worked." And at this point, point, I was getting frustrated, so I just went straight up to my room. My mother followed me up the stairs, trying to comfort me by saying that this will help me grow as a person and become a responsible adult. My mother is also one of those people who can't tell others no and tries to become the victim in every situation. I told her I won't be paying rent and that she shouldn't require me to pay anything. She tried to guilt me into paying, but I told her to leave me alone. I then texted my friend about the whole situation, and she told me to suck it up and listen to my father because he is the main provider for the family and my father at the end of the day. I don't think I was in the wrong, but others might disagree. So seriously, am I the jerk? Because right now I don't know what to do. Oh man, this is so messed up it's not even funny. No, you're definitely not the jerk for not wanting to pay that because your parents' rationale is completely twisted. They don't want you to pay rent so you'll be a better member of society and a more responsible adult. They want you to pay rent at the age of 16, by the way, because they literally want money out of your pocket. Like that's the only reason they're trying to be like, oh, you're still a minor, but guess what? You have to pay rent. Like that really is so stupid and completely unfair. Your older sister doesn't even work and she never pays rent. And yet they don't go to her and say, okay, you're 18 years old. It's time to pay rent if you want to live here. Like that really is so dumb. I honestly don't blame you for being pissed off. Because in my opinion, it really seems like your family are just a bunch of leeches. Especially your father, who I can only assume is the person who like spearheaded this idea. Like this guy's already treating you differently, all because you're not his biological daughter. But then for him to like turn around and be like this and be like, oh yeah, you need to pay rent, $450 a month, please. Like if this doesn't prove that he's a massive leech and he's just trying to take money out of your pocket, then honestly, I don't know what will. So no, you're not the jerk, and if I was in your shoes, I might even consider quitting that job. Because if that job means you have to give up literally half your paycheck to them, then in my opinion, it is simply not worth having it in the first place. My entitled mother, who's relied on me for every trip she's ever gone on, adamantly refuses to do the same for me on my first vacation ever. Back in December of 2019, I decided to buy tickets to RTX. It was an event I wanted to go to for years. I finally had enough money saved up to make it happen, and I was excited. Then Corona happened. This year will be the first RTX since 2019, and I'm excited. I've been talking about this trip since 2019, but non-stop really for the past 3 months. I've been making sure she knows about it, so there's no issues with scheduling or anything. Last Saturday, I asked her if she had time for me to explain how to take care of my fish tanks while I'm gone. I have a saltwater and freshwater tank that I need 2 cubes of food in per day. I'd also need her to pour some fresh water into my saltwater tank from jugs of water that are filled and kept by my tank. That's it. 2 cubes, pour once a day for a 4-day trip. The conversation went something like this. I said, hey, the convention's this weekend and I'm leaving Thursday and I won't be back until Monday. Can I show you what you need to do for my fish? My mom then shoots back by saying, oh, so you need me to watch your fish for you? I say, yeah, they just need food and water. That's honestly it. She then mouths off and says, and you're asking me to take care of Barnacle? Barnacle, by the way, is a family dog, not my dog specifically. She goes on to imply that the fact that she has to take care of Barnacle as well as our grandfather. All of this basically totaling to her being passive aggressive about needing to take care of my fish. For some context, my mother loves to travel. She goes on at least 2 to 3 trips a year, often for a week or more. This past December, she went ziplining in Costa Rica for 2 weeks, a trip that she and my aunt and uncle had planned for months. For further context, my grandmother, who's her mother, was literally on her deathbed in December. She passed away in January, and while my mother was ziplining, I had to make sure my grandmother was properly cared for, woke up 2 times a night to turn her and to check her respirator, as well as many other things related to her health. I literally told my mother, do not worry about anything at home, I've got this, you go relax. Because I knew that the stress of seeing my grandmother so near death was weighing on her just as much as it was for me. There have also been numerous other trips my mom has taken where I had to care for my grandmother and the dog and my tanks in less dire circumstances. My grandmother has had Alzheimer's and dementia for about 8 years, so there was a slow and steady decline, and I was there for her when my mother went on her week-long trips. I was obviously frustrated with this, and the day after, I decided to stand up for myself and explain that I felt upset and incredibly disrespected, like she was trying to guilt trip me about me taking my one trip. I asked her if I could talk to her about how she made me feel, and surprisingly enough, she agreed to listen. I said, you implied that the responsibility of the fish that only need to be fed and watered, the dog that we've had for over a decade that has the same routine you've been a part of all that time, and my grandfather who has a home attendant for most of the day was something I was unfairly dumping on you, and honestly, I didn't like that. My mom then comes back with the perfect excuse saying, oh well, I work overtime
time every day and I'm tired and exhausted. And honestly, I just didn't want to do it. I don't want to have to take care of everything, but I have to because I have no choice. I'm allowed to be annoyed and upset.
I was so frustrated, I just left the conversation at that. As angry and frustrated as I was, I didn't want to confront her on it because it was going to be a huge fight, and I'm not trying to have that a week before my convention. Today, I find out that she scheduled some renovations on her home upstate. They're scheduled to arrive this weekend, and worst of all, she scheduled these renovations yesterday. I don't even know what to say. She's going to be leaving the dog with my aunt, who's even less responsible than my mom is. My grandfather will be in the house alone after the home attendant leaves at 5 every day for the weekend, and my fish are basically screwed. I'm not the kind of person who hangs out at night or parties or anything like that. I never have been. But this weekend is literally the first time I'll be away from home by myself in my entire life. This weekend was planned back in 2019, but my mom respects me and my time so little that a week before the convention and days since a conversation where I explained to her that I'd need her help taking care of things at home, she scheduled renovations for the exact week I needed her. I'm so angry right now that all I can do is cry. What do I do? Your mom sucks. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that. It's terrible that she is doing all this right before you finally have your own vacation. I mean, how selfish can someone possibly be? And it's not like you're asking a lot from your mom in the first place. These are very simple requests. It's not like groundbreaking stuff. Your mom is just super inconsiderate and super entitled. She even goes as far as to admit that I just don't want to do it. Yeah, well, people sometimes don't want to do things, but they do it anyways because they care for those around them. Like, that's just life. You got to do a lot of things that you don't want to do. And the icing on the cake is the fact that she's doing renovations the same week that you're going to be gone. I mean, that is just such garbage and it's so unfair. For the trip itself, I would maybe get a friend and give him a key to your house and say, hey, could you make sure my fish don't die over the weekend? I'm sure there's somebody that you know or some kind of friend or somebody that you can hire to say, hey, come over, take care of the fish because my mom sucks. Or you could even get that attendant who takes care of your grandfather, give them some extra cash and say, hey, could you take care of my fish? That way you can have some kind of peace of mind regarding your pets. Overall, this is a really terrible situation to be stuck in, and I'm really sorry you're dealing with it, but hopefully you're able to enjoy RTX and have a good time and at least make some kind of good memories. Also, by the way, if you haven't thought about it already, now's a pretty good time to start looking at moving out, because living in that kind of environment is not fair for you or anybody else. And I honestly can't think of a better wake-up call for this mom than to dump literally all of this responsibility on her, just to see how she feels when she's asking for help. And then when that day comes, you can conveniently say, you know what? I just don't want to do it. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for finally telling the truth about my cheating wife after she lied to me for years and forced me to raise a kid that wasn't even mine? I work 2 jobs with long hours, which sucks, but I do it to provide for my wife and daughter. It is wearing me out, but when I see my daughter smile, it brightens my day and makes it all worth it in the end. But let me back up a little bit and give some backstory. I was born into foster care since I was abandoned at a church shortly after I was born. I wouldn't find out who my parents were until much later in life, but it wouldn't really mean anything, and it actually hurt me worse when I found out just how terrible they were. So I was born into 2 different foster care houses, which luckily for me were not nearly as bad as some of the places that I've heard of from other people who were put in the same scenario, and honestly, I thank God for that. My biggest dream was to have a family of my own to make up for the lack of one I ever got, and when I was 24, I met and then married my current wife after she got pregnant. I wanted to be responsible, so I did the right thing and proposed so as to take care of her and the baby. I was going to college at the time, but due to the need for money as well as a tight budget, I had to leave and find work fast. Luckily, I have friends who were able to get me a good paying job, but while it paid the bills, I would still need more to provide for the baby, so I took another job as well just so I could start saving up, and I've worked at both of these jobs for several years. Just to give you an idea, I work as security in the morning and as a chef at a dinner-only restaurant at night. So my life for the past 8 or so years has been basically me going to work early in the morning, coming home to hold my daughter, play with her for just a little bit to let her know that daddy still loves her. I would then take a little bit of a nap until I needed to go into my second job. I was the only one working since my wife insisted that she be a stay-at-home mom, which was fine with me since someone was at home to watch our daughter when she came home from school. A bit more than 2 weeks ago, I found out my wife has been cheating on me, and what I would come to learn later is that this has been going on for years. I came home early from my morning job due to the building being shut down so that the security system could be upgraded. So I went home in a good mood and thought to play with my daughter for a bit and then take a nap for my night job, just so I can actually get enough sleep for once. When I got home, I noticed a strange car in the driveway. I had never seen it before, so I honestly had no idea who it belonged to. I was worried since this is so strange, so I quietly enter my house with a tire iron just in case it was a home robbery or something along those lines so I can at least defend myself. But that wasn't the case. In fact, it was much, much worse. I heard noises that were not very appropriate coming from the direction of my wife and I's bedroom, and after a little bit of secretive investigation, I found out the worst, that yes, my wife was indeed cheating on me in our own bedroom. The revelation of this stunned me to the point that I felt my heart stop. Time slowed down and I couldn't move as I just stood there and watched everything happen. My wife then says to this man that, oh, it's fine, my husband will never know, and he'll just take care of the kid if I get pregnant again. Those words flipped my world around. I left my house just as quietly as I had entered it, and I drove off. I drove to a hilltop view of the city, which is one of the places I would go when I was younger as to give myself some peace of mind. And once I got up there, I broke down into tears. The wife I loved, the one I sacrificed so much for, had been cheating on me, and according to what I was hearing, my own daughter might not even be mine. So I got a DNA kit in secret, and I got a DNA kit for my daughter as well, without my wife knowing, and sent it in for the results. I prayed for the first time in years that my fears were wrong, that maybe I had just misheard her implications out of shock or rage. So I waited until the test results came in, and unfortunately, they proved I was not the father of our child. I remember staying home that day and waiting for her to come home as well. When she did, she saw me sitting at the table and sat down across from me. She asked what was wrong and said nothing as I slid the papers across the table that proved our daughter was not mine. Her face went white as she saw them. All I could ask her at that moment was, why? That was the only thing I could manage to say. The rage within me was indescribable at this point. She tried to make up some lie, some excuse in her head, but in the end, she told me straight out,
"It's because you've never been there for me. You did this to me. I have urges you aren't around to satisfy."
I left after hearing her say that. This woman, no, this monster, who told me time and time again that we didn't have enough money and that I needed to put in more hours so that we could pay for things that we needed. She actually had the audacity to tell me that her cheating on me was my fault, that me working all day to provide for my family was reason enough for her to cheat on me. Never in my life have I felt more of a temptation to resort to physical violence ever than this very moment. I packed a bag with clothes and then went to a friend's place and explained what happened. They told me to file for divorce, so I went through the process and I'm still going through it as of writing this post. The issue that might make me the jerk here is that we were invited to a family reunion this last Sunday, and I had taken time off to go. Her family respected me and thought of me as family, so we went to the reunion, since we had said we were already gonna go, and her daughter still should hang around her cousins when able to. The entire time we were on our way there, which took 3 hours by car, she begged me not to mention the cheating, or the fact that I wasn't actually this kid's father. The reason for this is that her great-grandmother, a woman in her late 90s who even I respect despite no actual blood relation to her, she was going to be there, and this was more than likely going to be her last reunion before she left to a better place. My wife didn't want her great-grandmother to know that I hate her for it. I promised nothing and simply grunted as a response. So we get there and I hang out with the guys there, as far away from my wife as I could get, and all day I hear these men tell me that I was doing such a good job being a father to our daughter. This isn't the first time they did this. Since the last reunion I went to, they explained that they hadn't approved of me at first. They assumed I was going to be a deadbeat dad sort of person, and actually apologized when they saw that I was not that type of guy. To this day, I still hold no hard feelings about that assumption, since in a way I can understand where they are coming from. But now every compliment on the matter felt like a knife in my heart, since I knew the truth about my wife's daughter, and yet I remained silent, and I just thanked them for their compliments. It wasn't until later that day that my wife's great-grandmother slowly came my way and spoke to me. She said the same thing as the men earlier, since she has seen so many parents in her life who didn't put in the amount of effort I did to raise a family. But it was at this point I finally broke down and I cried. Here I was, surrounded by my in-laws, crying hard. She took my hand and gave me a look that said, "Tell me your troubles, child." And I told her everything. The cheating, the truth about her great-granddaughter, everything. The silence that followed was indescribable, and I apologized and told them I couldn't be there anymore. I got in my car and drove 3 hours home. I didn't get my wife or her daughter. I drove drove home alone with my phone off. When I got home, I turned it on to see that I had so many missed calls from my wife and messages that summed up to her calling me a jerk for telling her family the truth, and that I ruined her relationship with the family, and that she was going to make my life miserable when she got back home. So I called a few friends and began the process of boxing my stuff. She got home Tuesday night via her sister driving her back, but by that point, I had all but moved into my friend's downstairs parlor area, where I am currently living at the moment. While telling the truth was honestly like lifting a burden off my shoulder, I fear the ramifications of doing so for my wife's daughter. Because I told the extended family that she is the product of an affair, she might be shunned and hated like her mother now is within her family. I never wanted this for her. I would never wish such a thing on the child, since it wasn't her choice to be born as she was. So what should I do? Am I the jerk for telling her family the truth? I don't think you're the jerk at all. I honestly, if I was in that situation, probably would have done the same thing. I can't think of a better way to get back at this lying person than to get back at them where it counts. I would scream that from the rooftops. And honestly, saying this at a family reunion for everybody to hear gets it out in the public without her trying to twist the story around. I honestly don't blame you for doing it. I think you can definitely feel like a jerk at the moment, but this lady literally ruined your life. This kid is not even yours because she cheated on you for years, and she was using you to try and get you to raise another kid for her. She was flying high while you were working your butt off every single day, working 2 jobs. I would not feel bad about this at all. This lady got what's coming to her. And yeah, she's probably going to try and make your life a nightmare, but that should be evidence enough that this lady is crazy and a terrible person. So no, you are not the jerk in the situation. The lady who cheated on you for years, who's raising a daughter that isn't even yours, she is the jerk. And I think you already know this, but you're going to be a lot happier without that psychopath in your life. I am at my wit's end with my girlfriend's phone calls, and I don't know what to do. My girlfriend and I have been together for 18 months. She's absolutely fantastic, and by far the best partner I have ever had. However, there is one issue that has arisen, and that's her excessive phone calls. For background, our schedules are as follows. Saturday morning to Tuesday morning, we spend time together. Tuesday to Friday, we both work intensive hours, so we can't really see one another. I mostly work from home, while her job involves a long commute. Every weeknight, we spend time together via phone or video chat. We talk, watch TV together, cook. It's a great way to feel connected when circumstances prevent us from actually being together. I enjoy this time very much, and we never run out of things to do or talk about. We do this for about 2 to 3 hours per night. This is not the problem. I really want to stress this to you. I enjoy this time together. However, she calls me on her morning commute into work, which is about an hour, as well as her lunch break, which is also an hour, as well as her evening commute home, which is also another hour. Unlike our nightly conversations, I do not enjoy these calls. At night, we talk about anything and everything under the sun, and the well never runs dry. The commuting phone calls are the exact opposite. She has nothing to say, I have nothing to say, and honestly, why would we? We've either just woken up or have spent a long time at work. My girlfriend is an extrovert, and I suspect she has difficulty spending time alone. The content of our daytime conversations strongly support this. In contrast to our free-flowing and natural nightly calls, the day ones are extremely forced, and I often get the impression that she's just desperate for noise of any kind. This honestly leaves me drained, because I feel like the pressure is on to supposedly entertain her in order to relieve her boredom, restlessness, or anxiety. Basically, I'm looking for advice on how to escape or at least reduce these daytime calls. I just wish it was simple because there's so many stipulations. She is an incredibly sensitive person, for one. Bringing the issue up to her will not go well. I can't do this because she will be utterly devastated. I know for a fact that one of her previous relationships ended because her ex was irritated by the frequency of her phone calls, and I do not want to make her feel the same way. I love this woman, and I don't want her to feel hurt. I also can't just make excuses every time she calls. 3 excuses per day isn't going to fly. There's only so many grandmas that can pass away for me to get out of a phone call. And I've also tried to encourage her to text me during the day instead of calling me. I wouldn't mind texting her more. It's the static nature of phone calls that are bothersome during the day. However, she does not like texting. She does suffer from ADHD and finds it hard to concentrate on texts, so that's out too. She knows that my work routine is sporadic. I have long-term deadlines, not short ones. This means that she knows I'm never technically too busy to make phone calls. So deadline-related excuses don't really work in terms of getting me out of these phone calls. I love my girlfriend. I just want to try and make this work. What should I do? I totally understand that your girlfriend is a sensitive individual, but honestly, in order for there to be proper communication, you're gonna have to say something. And it's not like you're gonna come into this and be argumentative about it. Obviously, you can just say something to the effect of, hey, hey, can we maybe cut the conversations down, or some kind of nice way of saying it. You are both adults, and you really should be able to talk about this without any kind of major blow up. I understand that preconceived notions about previous relationships would definitely add some stress in talking about this, but it really is possible to bring this up in a gentle way that you can both come to some kind of mutual understanding. But what would you do? Leave a comment down below and let us know. We'd love to hear it. An entitled customer tried to expose me over our restaurant's prices, but fails miserably. So today, a weird situation happened. A guy walked in and said he wanted to place an order to go. He looks at the menu for a minute and then decides to order one of our breakfast skillets. However, he wanted to add a bunch of extras and modifications. He asked for extra meat, extra cheese, hot peppers, and mushrooms. I wrote down his order and then told him the total. He immediately goes, "What? Why does it cost that much?" I explained to him that we have to charge for extras, and with extra meat, cheese, and 2 extra veggies, it adds up quite a bit. I explained to him that I had to charge 99 cents for the extra veggie and extra cheese, and $2 for the extra meat. He looks at me and says, "Seriously? You're gonna charge me 99 cents for some hot peppers and $2 for some meat?" I basically just apologized and said that these are the prices and there's not much I can do otherwise. He then says, "Never mind, that's too expensive, forget about it." Then he storms out and leaves. Well, things got more interesting when 5 minutes later the phone rings. I answer it and I can immediately tell from the voice that it's the same guy from earlier who stormed out. He orders the exact same thing as before, but leaves out a couple of the previous additions. So instead of extra meat, cheese, hot peppers, and mushrooms, he just asked for extra meat and mushrooms. He then asked me for the total again. I tell him the new total, which is less than before, since he didn't add as many things. And this is where he thought he caught me in some kind of weird conspiracy theory. He goes, "Ha, I was just in there minutes ago and ordered the exact same thing, and you said it was more. But now that you don't know what I look like, you're telling me it's some cheaper amount." I said to him, "Yeah, that's because this time you didn't add the extra cheese and hot peppers." He then just laughed and hung up the phone. I was so baffled. Like, what is this guy's problem? I'm just so tired of people saying, "I want extra this, that, and then getting mad when we have to charge them for it. So the moral of the story, if you ask for extra, you're gonna get billed for extra. How weird can you possibly be? People who act like this and fight over the prices of a store or a restaurant of some kind are just really weird in my mind, to be completely honest. Like, these are outliers of society, because those prices are not gonna change for you. You are not a VIP for this restaurant. They do not care about you that much. You are a normal customer just like anybody else. So pretending like you shouldn't have to pay for stuff is this weird form of entitlement that I will never understand. So yeah, if you ask for extra stuff at a restaurant, be prepared to pay for more, because otherwise you're just gonna look entitled, and everybody, including that minimum wage worker that you're currently yelling at over prices, are 100% gonna make fun of you online afterwards. And to be honest, you kinda deserve it. My entitled mom is demanding to live with me and my boyfriend in our soon-to-be house, and I honestly don't know what to do. My mom and dad wants us, meaning me and my boyfriend, to buy their house because they are having a divorce. We were thrilled because we have been searching for a house for a few years now. Sadly, they are ending their relationship on bad terms. Now, my mom keeps pressuring me to let her live with us. My dad is just cool and tells us to think wisely. First, some backstory. Me and my mom are from the Philippines and are now currently living in the Netherlands with my stepdad, who I call my dad. My mom has given me PTSD, and I am also bipolar. She has physically and emotionally hurt me for years. Her reasoning for this is so that she can discipline me, which is honestly just cruel and unusual punishment. The last few years, she has been depressed and does literally nothing other than watch videos online on her couch. My dad has to do everything: cook food, walk the dogs, pretty much every house chore you can think of, all because my mom wouldn't lift a finger for him or anyone else in the house, including the dogs. After 3 years, my dad is tired and completely done with this behavior. He tried to talk to her about this, but she would just ignore him. He even asked me and my boyfriend for any kind of advice, and I told him that my mom wants to go back to the Philippines because she is happier there. My dad is a very nice person, and he definitely deserves more than her. My dad is a truck driver who works 65 hours a week. He is tired and not happy. My mom is pressuring me that after we buy their house, that she must live with us for free, and that we should kick my dad out because he isn't family. My boyfriend was not amused by this, as he knows that she would treat us like slaves. What should I do? It sounds like your mom is really not a good person. She clearly was very mean to you emotionally and physically as a child, and it sounds like she's incredibly lazy and doesn't do anything to pull her weight. Like, for 3 3 years, this guy was absolutely miserable dealing with her. And it sounds like from the original poster that this is how she acted all the way through her childhood as well. She was very dismissive and she just did not care about anybody but herself. And that's just really not fair, especially when you're a mom to kids who need you to be there for them. Not to mention the husband who was dealing with all of this by himself. So no way. If I was the original poster in this situation, there is no way on earth I would allow my mother to move in with me and my boyfriend, especially if I know exactly how she's gonna act. And honestly, you know it's bad when your father goes to you for advice on your mother. At the bare minimum, you would hope at least that a husband and wife would be working together to figure out their problems. But from the sounds of it, the mom in this situation just doesn't care and doesn't want to be involved. So yeah, I wouldn't let her in your house for a second, because you can bet all of the laziness that she's exhibited in her previous marriage is only going to be inflicted upon you if you let her live with you. And that is a fact. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the link in the description if you'd like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for receiving an award that was someone else's who just so happens to have the same name as me? Me and my friend, who I'll call Sophia, that's not her real name, have always had the same name. We re-met each other in high school and I introduced her to my friends. She then proceeded to steal my friends and talk garbage about me behind my back to them throughout the year. When I first reconnected with her, she was very fun to be around, but as time passed, I began to notice that whenever I was around her, she would just constantly be complaining about something. She then started to treat me like garbage. She would begin shushing me when I start to talk in a group conversation. She would intentionally leave me out of activities that she invited me to, and then she would more openly talk garbage about me. We were both really into theater, and over the summer, me, Sophia, and Brinley, one of the friends I introduced her to, which is also not her real name, we all went together to the same theater camp at the same time. It was honestly very fun, despite Sophia complaining the entire time. And we all thought we did a good job on our performance at the end of the week. Me and Sophia were the two main characters in the play, and at the ending scene, she had the last line. The line was a memorabilia of sorts to the beginning of the show. At the awards ceremony the next day, I got awards for improv as well as an all-star cast. But mistakenly, I also got one of Sophia's awards as well, all because we both have the same name. The award was for the closing line delivery. I didn't realize it at first because I just heard my full name and was excited to have gotten an award at all. I only found out afterwards when I rejoined the group. When I arrived back to them, I commented, genuinely confused, "That's weird, I didn't have the closing line." After I said that, everyone proceeded to talk to me and say that it wasn't my award and that I shouldn't have gone up there. Even though some of them were trying to comfort me, I ended up getting a little emotional and tears started streaming down my face. I was so embarrassed to have gone up there and taken pictures with the adjudicators when it wasn't even my award. Everyone in the auditorium was staring at me getting yelled at, and I was humiliated. I then wrongfully lashed out and told them all to shut up because they were making a scene. I understood that was wrong of me, and I admitted that later on. During the confrontation, I offered the certificate to Sophia because it was rightfully hers, and they made that pretty obvious. But it was refused. Whether by her or someone else, I still don't know. After the ceremony, we all got on the bus and went back home. Hours later, Sophia texted me asking for a picture of the certificate. I sent her a picture and she texted back, "Are you really going to keep it?" I said that I wasn't sure, and she then brought up that it wasn't mine to frame and idolize. When I said that I knew that and that I didn't want to keep it, she kept bringing up useless points, just trying to argue. I brought up that it wasn't my fault they mixed it up, and that I didn't know what else she wanted from me, but she demanded that I apologize even though none of it was my fault. Her exact wording. It didn't make any sense, but I did apologize after a little. She then continued with the argument even after and brought up stupid points that had already been talked about. She was going in circles at this point. She was mad she didn't get recognized. She was also mad that everyone was comforting me instead of her, and she was mad that I hadn't apologized immediately afterwards. She was also especially mad that I went up for the other awards, even though they were rightfully mine. It was honestly extremely tiring to go back and forth for things she was blaming me for. I eventually asked for an apology from her for wrongfully blaming me, as well as never letting me get a word in a normal setting. She said that she refused to give me one because she knew that she handled everything perfectly, even the conversation we were having just now. She never gave me an apology yet, continuing to blame me, though she will say she wasn't, even the day after. She just wouldn't stop with the arguments and repeated points that I'd already apologized for. I had emailed the theater organization in order for them to send her another copy of the certificate, but with her name on it instead, and left it at that. I did this as I did not know what else I could possibly do to try and satiate her. I stopped responding to her texts and I haven't talked to her since. So what should I do? Am I the jerk for this situation? It sounds like this really is not your fault. It sounds like it's the theater organization's fault for getting your names completely mixed up. Like they said your name, which happens to just be this other lady's name, and that you went up there by accident. It wasn't on purpose. The way your doppelganger is acting is completely uncalled for. So personally, in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk. I think things could have been handled much better in my opinion, but I think overall, you're not really to blame here. If anything, your friend should be pissed off at the theater organization. They completely took away from her moment and they completely ruined your experience at camp. So if she continues to complain to you, be like, hey, call the theater organization. They've got a new certificate coming for you with your name on it. Because honestly, aside from that, there's not much you really can do. I found out that my wife is cheating on me, and worst of all, she refuses to admit it. For some backstory, my wife and I have been together for nearly 9 years. We met in college, dated for 3 years, and are approaching our 6th wedding anniversary. We have always had a great relationship. We've had our share of normal struggles that any relationship might have as you begin to build a life with someone, but nothing major. Around May of 2021, we bought our first house, which we have been saving up for years. It needed quite a bit of remodeling, and we, mainly me, spent months getting the house remodeled before moving in a few months later. During this time, my wife started hanging out more and more with a work friend. At first, I thought nothing of this and was genuinely happy she had made a new friend. I should note that I never did, and to this day have not met this friend of hers. Around August 2021, I went on my first of many work trips that I would make over the next several months. While away on these trips, her friend would come over some nights, and a few times would stay until 2 or 3 in the morning, even on a work night. This was a little weird for me, and along with the constant texting and some comments made about this friend, I started getting a little suspicious. I also just had a gut feeling that I was being lied to. At one point, I actually confronted her about this. I told her how I felt and asked if there might be more going on between this friend. She said no and was annoyed that I would even think that. She even said, especially with a girl, and then questioned me like I was stupid to assume she might have an intimate relationship with this girl. I tried believing her, and I just moved on. I made attempts to have my wife invite her friend to gatherings at our house, as well as when we go out with a group of friends, but she was conveniently not available. She only ever seemed to be available when I was out of town or busy doing something else. Fast forward a few months, and I still can't shake this feeling that I'm being lied to. After a little digging and some spying, of which I'm not proud of, but sometimes you just have to look out for yourself, guess what? I find out that this girl does not work with my wife and that they had met on a dating app in June of 2021, presumably during the time that I was working a full-time job and fixing our new house on the weekends. I even overheard a FaceTime call in which they talked about intimate things they had done. I caught my wife sneaking around and going to her mom's house with this girl in the middle of the day when no one was home. I've confronted her a few times about it, but she continues to deny and tell me that I am wrong. It usually ends in an argument, and I almost ended our relationship during the last one. Since then, she agreed to stop seeing her supposed friend, and we're just trying to move forward. But things just seem off now. I have so many questions still, and have not received a real apology. I've never experienced depression and anxiety until now. Some days are great and things feel back to normal, but others are a struggle. I'm afraid to bring it up again because I don't want to fight. I'm questioning everything now and just want things to go back to normal. We've talked about couples therapy, but it's not in our budget at the moment. I'm worried I won't be able to ever get over this. What should I do? This is a horrible situation to be in because guess what? You're probably leaning towards divorce. This lady cheated on you while you're building your mutual home together. I mean, how crazy is that? She completely lied to you behind your back and went behind your back to get with this other woman. It's obvious that you love her and it's obvious you want to try and make this work. But at what point do you need to take a stand and say enough is enough? Now, I'm not saying you should divorce this person by any means, but I think you really need to consider what kind of future you think you're going to have with her if she's actively going behind your back to get with somebody else. That speaks volumes to anything she's trying to do currently. So in my my opinion, I think you really need to take a long, hard look at this situation, because I personally would not want to stay with someone who has very clearly betrayed my trust, and I would do what I need to do to make sure that I'm happy and that my future is secure, even if that means letting go of somebody who has clearly shown that they don't want me in their life. Today I messed up by giving a distressed stranger a ride. I'll preface this by saying I know I put myself in this situation with my stupidity. My desperation to be a helping hand to anyone and everyone has bit me in the butt so many times and could have easily messed me up this time. So if you call me an idiot after this, trust me, I agree. This happened about 3 hours ago. I was out at a gas station about 3 minutes from my house getting snacks and drinks for my family when I saw a beautiful, well-dressed woman in tears talking to the cashier. She was begging to use a phone, saying she didn't know where she was. When I got to the front, she saw me and asked if I had a phone she could borrow. She looked so scared and lost, so I said sure. I let her make a call as I finished paying and was about to leave, and she followed me out. She told me how she was from the south side of town and came up north with some friends. The friends and her had a fight in the car and she got out and walked. They left her there and drove away with her phone. She said she needed to find a bus stop but had no idea which buses to take and couldn't look up bus routes without a phone. I offered to look the route up and write it down, but she was like, "Hey, can I pay you to take me to the closest bus station?" I looked up the bus station location and she was like, "That's right by where I live. If I pay you extra, could you take me home?" I hesitated, but as I said, this woman was well dressed. She was well made up. She had a nice purse and some nice shoes. She was gorgeous and about my age. So I'm thinking to myself, what's the harm? I've been stranded before and it honestly sucks. I might as well get her home safely. Besides, it's only a 20 to 25 minute drive max. So I looked at her and I agreed. We set out and she gives me the address to go to. The whole time we're riding, we're talking, laughing, and telling stories. At one point, she asks if she can put on the next song, so I agree. She takes my phone and starts playing DJ. She sets the phone on her lap instead of putting it back in the cup holder, and because of that, I couldn't see the directions. I had to keep asking where the exits were and how much further till the next turn. Eventually, she navigates me off the highway and says we're close. I told her my phone was gonna die soon if we kept the music and maps on, and that I have no charger in the car. She's like, "Oh, it's fine. You can take one of my chargers at the house." But she kept my phone in her lap and kept the music on. Then all chit chat and small talk dies off, and she's answering things in one-word responses. I'm thinking that she's just looking around for our turn into her neighborhood, but the problem came when I saw the street name I typed in coming up. I said, "Oh, here's your street," and she says, "Yeah, go straight." So we passed the street we were supposed to go to, and I realized my phone had just died and was sitting in her lap still. I start to get very nervous. I realize we are going in wide circles, constant right turns that are leading further and further from the highway. Honestly, at this point, I'm getting lost. She breaks the silence and says, "We're like 2 minutes away. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this. How blessed I am that you came to my rescue. We're gonna hang out and have a good time before you head back." I said that I actually wouldn't have that kind of time. She didn't respond. Nothing about the way she said that felt right. She made this little giggle and stared out the window, and after that, there was more silence that really creeped me out. A little further down the road, I see her crack open a beer from a bag that was sitting on the floor. I said to her, "Seriously?" She said, it's fine, I'll just chug it, no problem." I fumed silently, praying for her turn to come up like now. I see a gas station and I notice I'm almost on empty, so I pull in and say, "Hey, I wasn't planning on being out this long, and if I don't head back right now, I'll miss my kiddos' bedtime. I really like to be there for reading before bed." She's like, "No problems. I'm just a bit further down after you get your gas." I tell her, "You said it was 2 minutes away about a minute ago, so I figured this is as close as I'm gonna go." That's when the mood switched instantly. Suddenly she says, "I can't pay you here when my cash is at the house though. Look at the intersection. There's no sidewalk. I'm gonna get hit by a car. It's literally on your way back to the highway. You can drop me off at the neighborhood entrance. It's fine. Come on." I tried to stand firm by saying, "No, my family is waiting on me and I've been gone for 40 minutes. And you said it would only take 20 to 25 minutes max. I have to go. Suddenly, it struck me. We weren't anywhere near the bus station we originally discussed. Not even close. So she started to get upset and used a tone in her voice that said there would be problems if I didn't take her just a little bit further. And good Lord, I did not want any beef. So I turned the car on, smiled, and said, "Oh, okay, hon, just a little further. Oh, shoot, wait, you still need a lighter?" She had been begging for one the entire drive, by the way. I said, "Let me give you a couple of bucks to go grab one for us since we're stopped anyways. I'll pump some gas while you do it." Her tone immediately went back to bright and chipper as she said, "Oh my God, really? Thanks. I'm gonna make this so worth your while. Be back in a sec." She sets down my phone, takes the money, and walks across the parking lot to the store. The second the door closed behind her, I locked the car, threw it in drive, and took off. I drove towards where I thought the highway was, and had to stop at another gas station to grab a charger. I powered it up and looked at the map. I took stock of where I was, as well as where the bus station was, and where the address we were supposed to head to actually was, and realized without a doubt that she was completely lying. Probably about everything. I can't be sure if she was aiming to do something nefarious, or if she was just lying so I'd take her further than I originally agreed to. But I learned my lesson that day. Don't trust anyone, especially when giving them rides. I am quite legitimately baffled by this story. I cannot believe for a second that someone could be this dumb to allow some stranger to get a ride with them. I don't care who they are. That is so dangerous. I thought hitchhiking and getting rides from people was a thing of the past. I know there's things like Uber as well as other ride-sharing applications, but this situation is completely different. At least with Uber as well as some other ride-sharing applications, there's some kind of safety protocol to try and keep you safe. And there's an expectation that, hey, I'm going to be picking up strangers. But this lady did not sign up for that. She did not willingly become an Uber driver or any other kind of ride-sharing driver. She let some random chick into her car. And guess what? This lady led her on a wild goose chase. She led her all over town. It's horrifying. I can only imagine the terror she felt. Thank goodness she was able to find another gas station and get this lady out of her car. But this also begs the other question, what was she looking at on your phone? Like in my mind, I would be checking my bank account, my Venmo, my Cash App, any other application that might have been easily accessible that this lady possibly could have gotten into. This person has no idea what was accessed. She very easily could have transferred money to her own bank account without you knowing. Like this could have gone so much worse than it actually did. Honestly, this is a powerful lesson in being careful and thinking of yourself first. So many people, in my opinion, get in so much danger and life-threatening situations, all because they are too nice. There is nothing wrong with saying no. There's nothing wrong with self-preservation and thinking of you and your family first. You absolutely have to think of yourself first and foremost when you're in public or in any kind of situation. You want to know why? Because nobody else will. This is a classic case of a wolf in sheep's clothing. This lady, to the original poster, seemed completely normal, completely fine. In fact, the beginning of the trip seemed actually kind of appropriate. They were laughing and talking as if they were friends. But when it came down to it, this original poster did not know this lady for a second. And this honestly could have ended up so much worse. This was a horror story waiting to happen, and this original poster genuinely got off easy. So remember, the next time you're in public, please be careful and don't give rides to strangers, because you never know what kind of crazy person's gonna sit in your car. My entitled ex-girlfriend demands the engagement ring I was going to use to propose to her before she broke up with me. Eventually, the cops were involved and she was arrested. Here's what happened. A while back, I was dating this girl for roughly 2 years. I thought things were going great, but apparently, she was just dating me because she liked to tell people she was in a relationship. The way she would describe me was being too immature and honestly not worth the rest of her life. Those were her exact words that a friend of mine said to me before we broke up. But before I get ahead of myself, I went out and bought a ring, and I had this entire thing planned out to propose to her. However, she was suddenly not available for several weeks in a row. Well, my fears rang true as she suddenly showed up at my place one day and acted like everything was normal. And as we talked, she started grabbing for everything that was hers. About halfway through, I just kind of looked at her and said, don't forget your hair dryer. It would be awkward to have you come back over after you dump me. This sparked a long and awkward conversation where she was just fake crying. I had realized right then and there there that I was an idiot. The way she acted, the way she spoke, and the way she treated me just screamed that she did not care about me. I was absolutely, honestly devastated, but seeing her made me angry. I had realized she was lying to me this entire time. About a month later, a friend of hers called me up and asked if she could come over to talk. I asked why, and she said that my ex pissed her off and she wanted to tell me some things. My mind immediately goes to the worst case scenario, like she needs to tell me that I need to go see a doctor or something like that. Well, her friend came over and we chatted for a while. You see, her friend was beyond pissed off, and she was close to ending the relationship with her entirely. So in her mind, her way of getting back at her friend, who just happens to be my ex, is for her to spend some quality time with her ex-boyfriend, that being me, if you know what I mean. Me being in the mental state that I was in, I said yes. But in reality, what I really said was, sure. Yeah, we could do that if you really want to. So she ends up staying over for a few days as we get to talking about my ex-girlfriend. I tell her about the ring and she had the best idea to get back at my ex. So she thought it would be good if we both laid down on the bed and I post a picture of ourselves with the ring in between us. I thought that was a terrible idea, but I wanted my ex to feel like garbage, so I went ahead and did it. Not even 2 hours later, my ex was at the door. We posted this picture at about 11 o'clock in the morning and she was at my place at 12:40 or something like that. Right off the bat, she tried to act like breaking up with me was a mistake. She said that I was the best boyfriend she ever had, and she was getting scared with how serious things were getting. She said she made a terrible mistake in breaking up with me. Well, her friend immediately goes into a rant about my ex, saying that she was manipulative and that neither of us would believe this sob story she was giving. I gotta say, I'm very glad that my friend was there because I might have been stupid enough to believe my ex. I reminded her of how she treated me when she broke up and that she should go home, saying that she was just wasting her time. Well, now she brought up the ring. She said to me that she deserved that ring under the law and said that rings are gifts and that I cannot take it back. In unison, me and her friend said that I never gave it to her in the first place. We both looked at each other and laughed a bit, as the absurdity of the situation was getting outrageous. She then went on to say that she was owed that ring and that she was not leaving without it. At about this time, a police officer came up the stairs wanting to know what the trouble was. I guess we made enough noise that the neighbors called the police. The female officer asked what the situation was. Everyone tried to talk all at once, but the officer shut us down. She pointed to my ex and asked her what the problem was. She said she was trying to pick up her stuff after we broke up. The officer then asked me if that was true. I explained the situation of how my ex broke up with me before I had the chance to propose to her and that she was never given the ring. Throughout the conversation, 2 more officers showed up, one of them being the supervisor. The whole story was explained like 4 times. At one point, my ex even said that the money from the ring will help her pay off her car. I responded after hearing this outrageous statement that the ring isn't expensive and it was bought used off of a website. And I reminded her that I am an IT tech, so I couldn't afford some crazy expensive ring. The anger and rage that came over her face was immediately apparent to everyone. She stepped forward and punched me in the chest and kicked at me before being tackled to the ground by the female officer. The supervisor on scene told us to go inside while they get her under control. We did, and about 10 minutes later, they came back. They wanted my statement, and I told them I didn't want to press charges against her, but they said, yeah, it doesn't work like that. We saw it, so it's being processed. She ended up getting a misdemeanor offense for it, and she never did get that ring. What an absolute dumpster fire all of these people are. This guy got dumped by his girlfriend who's clearly crazy. This lady's friend then goes over to this boyfriend to get back at her friend by spending quality time with her ex-boyfriend. This is like off of like some daytime TV show. This is ridiculous. I mean, I hate to use this terminology, but if any relationship could be seen as a hot mess, this whole situation is just a steaming pile of hot mess. I think this guy got off easy by getting away from his ex-girlfriend. She is clearly unhinged and was obviously only using him just to say that she had a relationship going. Like, she clearly didn't like him at all. And maybe it's mean, but for me personally, I kind of love it when people pop off in front of the police and they show their true colors. It only takes a little bit to really frustrate them enough for them to really start acting the way they normally act when people aren't around. And when they do and they they start lashing out like that, it's wonderful to see because you know for a fact they're about to get punished for the behavior that you've dealt with behind closed doors for years. So good for this guy for getting away from his crazy ex-girlfriend, and hopefully he can put that ring to better use on someone that he knows for a fact will love and care for him for the rest of his life. An entitled group of strangers add me to a group message and try to guilt trip me into planning somebody else's wedding for free, and they simply would not take no for an answer. It's 5 a.m., and roughly an hour ago, I got added to a group chat with multiple people whom I've never met. I still honestly have no idea who some of them are. The first message was welcoming a bridal party. I have a few friends getting married soon, but I'm not part of any of their parties. I have been asked in the past, but I've said no. I personally have too much going on, and my partner is high risk for COVID, and I don't want to risk that. I'm also trying very hard to be very careful about who I spend my time around. Everyone knows this, and I haven't gone out, and 99% of my friends are online only. This is not something new or groundbreaking for my life right now either. As soon as I got invited, I read the intro, and I knew that it was going to be another crap storm. I keep getting volunteered for anything wedding related ever since I planned my best friend's wedding. Apparently, I did a great job, but because of this, people I don't know keep messaging me, expecting me to plan their weddings. Most of them expect this for free, and as you can imagine, of course I have not done any of them. I am not a wedding planner. I'm studying to be a mortician. I think those two things are very far away from each other in terms of career options. I don't respond to the group chat, and I tried to get some sleep. Eventually, my phone rings, and it's the person who added me on the other line, who, by the way, I have never been close with, but they for some reason felt the need to try and call me. I deny the call and message her that I am not interested in anything wedding related, and at that point, I also leave the group chat. She tries calling again, numerous times, so as a result, I block her. Again, I have never been close with her, and that's when my friend, this lady's sister, messages me in all caps that I cannot ignore a pregnant lady. She went on and on about how hard it is to plan a wedding, as well as take care of her kids. Both of these people have children, and I honestly don't know how many each of them have. But this friend I have known for less than 2 months, and whom I've met online, as well as never met in person, decided she wanted to get involved and try and guilt trip me into this situation. I tell her I don't care that they have children, and I rip into her. She's constantly complaining about not having friends, and I made sure she knew that this entitled behavior is probably why. So as a result, I block her too. Remember, kids, just because you're crazy and have kids does not mean I will plan your wedding for free. Wedding planning is no joke. That is one of those jobs where it is high risk, high reward. Because if it really goes wrong, you're in deep trouble. But on the opposite end, if it goes off really well, you're going to be seen as some amazing, incredible person. And it's going to be the most special night in these people's lives, probably forever. So it's really funny to me that this lady is somehow sucked into the wedding planning business without ever trying to be in the business in the first place, all because she did a good job at her best friend's wedding. But wow, is it absolutely inappropriate for these people to try and guilt trip this lady into planning this wedding simply because the bride is somehow pregnant, as well as pretty much everybody else in this group, it sounds like. Like, I'm really sorry that you have kids and that having kids is hard, but that does not mean that you're going to be planning somebody's wedding for free. There's also no way that anybody should allow that to happen for free. Like, if you're going to be planning somebody's wedding, you better be getting paid, because that's a lot of work. That's a lot of logistics, and that's a lot of hoops to jump through. So good for this lady for sticking to her values and blocking this lady after she was being super toxic, because nobody needs that, and nobody needs that kind of entitlement in their life. I feel like my husband prioritizes his gaming friends over me, and I'm not sure what to do about it. My husband and I have been together for a little over a year, and we've been married for about 2.5 months. While we were dating, he would spend lots of time with me and did everything he could to make me feel special. I've always known he has online friends he plays video games with, and understands that he occasionally needs guy time to decompress. I have absolutely no problem with that. The thing that bothers me is that ever since we've been living together, since late September of 2021, his friends have seemed to take first place. He spends about 70 to 90% of his time outside of work, either texting or playing a game with them. When he does play, he will play with them for 3 to 4 hours at least. I've expressed my concerns about it several times, explaining that we don't really spend time together anymore unless we're sleeping sleeping or trying for kids. I've explained that for months now, I have felt like I'm in second place for him. He always says something along the lines of, well, that's not true, you're my wife and I love you, and then either guilts me by saying I never let him play with them or that he's not allowed to have friends because of me. Both things are absolutely not true. I'm just tired of not getting the quality time I used to get with him. What do I do to get my husband to want to date me again? How do I convince him to see that his spouse should come first? What should I do? So this is a really tricky situation because I had to check this first and foremost. Both of the people in this story are 19 years old. So the husband and wife in this situation both got married very young, which honestly explains the way this husband's acting. Why on earth would you get married that young and then expect your husband to start acting mature and spending all his time with you? In my opinion, you're way too young to be married, and it sounds like your husband's responsibilities are not in the right place. I'm also willing to guess that these people have not had a long-term relationship before getting married, and that this just kind of happened and they just ran with it. In my opinion, this is a very bad idea. You're sprinting towards parenthood when both of you are still teenagers. Like, let's slow down a little bit and see where this goes first. I think maybe getting to know your husband a little bit more before you get married probably would have been very good. Obviously, you knew about his online friends and you knew that he was going to spend a lot of time gaming, but what you probably didn't predict is that while you're living together, he's probably going to be spending a lot of that time gaming with his friends too. So yeah, I think you got a long road ahead of you, to be completely honest, and I think you should have another honest conversation with your husband and say, hey, I want equal time. Hopefully this all goes well, and hopefully you're able to make this marriage work, because in my opinion, 19 years old is way too early to get married. My best friend and I haven't spoken in a year, and I'm planning my wedding, and I really need some advice on how I should reach out. We've been best friends for over half my lifetime. We were roommates for a year and a half in my early 20s without issues, especially beyond small bickering with chores and stuff along those lines. We had remained close even after we didn't live together. We are our most authentic and genuine selves together and can say anything without fear of judgment, and we knew each other's secrets, dreams, fears, everything. We are silly together, but we can be serious. We know how to cheer each other up and how to make each other laugh. We have been there for each other at our lowest as well as our highest points, and our bond is palpable. I love him and I know he loved me. We have had periods of low as well as no contact before, but those were never one-sided, and we always came back together as if nothing had happened. These periods sometimes coincided with new boyfriends on his part, something I thought he'd learn from. Otherwise, it was just when life would take us in two different directions, like going to college or getting a new job. But we would always be there for each other and stop whatever we're doing to help the other person, no matter how long it had been. During mid-2020, we reconnected after one of those low contact periods. After he broke it off with his boyfriend at the time and moved home, we had a heart-to-heart, and we vowed to never go silent again, and we returned everything back to normal. But then when he began dating again, he'd go for a few weeks without responding. He missed my engagement and seemed genuinely remorseful and vowed to be better at staying in touch. This was in January of 2021. That didn't even last all of January. We reconnected again in May, where he tearfully apologized for ignoring me all those months, and I learned he got a new boyfriend. Then in June, he moved to a neighboring state with his new said boyfriend, which was about 6 hours away. So in June of 2021, he officially moved. He wasn't in the best headspace due to issues with his boss as well as his colleagues, and he was hoping that this transfer would give him a fresh start. I tried checking in often and maintaining contact, but only a week after the move, he stopped responding to text messages as well as not answering my phone calls. I've tried countless times to get in touch. Calling and texting don't work, and he doesn't use social media. My messages that I would leave would vary between normal and sometimes silly, with the messages themselves being me either just checking in, having some semblance of concern, but in no way were they ever there to try and make him angry. I'm planning my wedding for late September now. He's always said he'd be in the party, as we've previously daydreamed together of how certain life milestones would happen, with each of us as involved in the others as possible. But now, I don't even have his address to send an invitation. Obviously, he won't have a role in the wedding per se, but I hope that he would at least want to attend. I reached out to his mom last week, whom I've always been very close with as well. I made it clear that there is no pressure to respond, and I do not want her to feel like I was putting her in the middle of anything. I just wanted her to know that I was concerned because I haven't heard from him, and I wanted to be able to say I tried everything. She replied and said that he was doing well, but often has a hard time getting in touch. She said she has called his boyfriend sometimes to get him to respond, and that she reached out to ask if he could get in touch with me. I thanked her and left it at that. He did try calling me that night. I was at a family meeting and I didn't see the missed call until 2 hours later. He didn't answer when I tried calling back, so I just texted him apologizing for missing his call and hoping he would link up soon. I also sent him our wedding website so he could RSVP without the physical invitation in his hands. But guess what? I got no response and no RSVP. So I called him again yesterday. This was a week after the first missed call, and still there was no answer. I have been drafting a final attempt text message for a while. To summarize it, and after putting my feelings out there and just explaining that I miss him and that I'm worried about him, I offered to drive out to him to meet up for lunch or something. Maybe I've done or not done something to upset him, but if he'd help me understand, I feel we could work through it. We can hash this out in person if he wants, so we can move forward or at least move on. I ended it by saying if I don't hear back, then I know he just wants to move on, which I would respect. I also said that I'll always hope the best for him and that he's an amazing person who deserves the best in life. I haven't sent this message yet, but I'm honestly just looking for some advice. I imagine most of you will tell me it's a lost cause, that people grow apart, and it's just a fact of life. I can understand that and I can respect that, but I really do feel an urge to make this final attempt. After everything he and I have been through, I just really want to feel like I've truly tried everything. And also, I want to make it known that there are consequences for his continued silence. I just want to let him know that if he doesn't respond and if he doesn't come to the wedding, that I don't think there's much of a friendship worth salvaging. I guess I'm just asking what anyone else thinks. Is there anything else I should be doing? Should I even send this final attempt text message? Is there anything else I could try that maybe I'm not looking at? What should I do? I think if your friend's not responding back, that's a pretty clear message that they either want to move along or they don't care about your situation. I think the fact that they called you back is only because the mom got involved and probably grilled their son for not getting in contact with their former best friend. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm not sure what the situation might be, but it sounds like your friend is in a different place. And that's okay. Friends drift apart. Like, that cliche really is true. There are some friends I used to be ride or die with that now I barely talk to. And in some situations, that's okay. You clearly have your life ahead of you. You're getting ready to be married, and there's nothing wrong with you taking those steps forward and saying, hey, this is the direction I'm going. If you want to be a part of it, then come along for the journey. So I don't think the text message you plan on sending is wrong in any way. I think you have it lined up perfectly, and I think you've given some wonderful caveats as well as cop-outs if he really needs it. So in my opinion, go ahead and send the text message. But for the sake of your friendships, I really hope things work out, because it sounds like you two had a great friendship together, and I would hate to see that go to waste. My ex-boyfriend texted me nearly 2 years after breaking up with me, and I'm not sure what to make out of it. I'm looking for an opinion on this strange thing that happened yesterday. I am a 20-year-old female, and I woke up to a message from my ex-boyfriend yesterday. He texted me at 3 in the morning, telling me that his grandma was sick and that it brought up old memories for him. He essentially apologized, saying all the things I would have loved to hear when he first broke up a year and a half ago. I am now in a happy, healthy relationship, and I am just completely stumped as to why he felt it necessary to text me in the first place. It has been almost 2 years after all. I did respond and was very short with him, and to be honest, I was kind of a jerk. I decided afterwards to just block him because it's not worth my time or my stress. It was a horrible relationship. We were together for 3 years, in which he treated me like I was an option most of the time, and he even ended up confessing feelings for his close friend, which ultimately destroyed our relationship. He destroyed me and my sense of self-worth. I suspect he may have narcissistic tendencies. So why would he do this? Is there some specific reason? Has anyone else ever experienced anything like this before? So to me, this screams I'm looking for attention, if anything. This guy screwed up the one relationship that he ever had that actually was worth something, and he messed it up on his terms. He ruined it completely. And you know what? He probably wants to get back with you because he knows he can make you the victim again. And I bet you this made him feel some sense of power in the relationship. Honestly, blocking him was the best thing you could have done, especially since this guy was not a good person to this original poster. I don't blame this OP for blocking them at all. In my opinion, you just don't need that kind of energy in your life, especially after finally securing a solid, healthy relationship with someone who loves you and is going to treat you like a human being. The last thing you need to do is open the door for some narcissist who treated you like garbage for years to come walking back into your life and somehow get between you and your current current relationship. Honestly, you did the right thing, you blocked him, and you got rid of him. Because if you remember correctly, that's exactly what he did to you. So best of luck to you, and I really hope this guy doesn't message you again. An entitled Karen demands that I drive her everywhere every day all the time. And after being taken advantage of by this parasite, I eventually put my foot down and say no more. And once I say that, she absolutely loses it. I haven't spoken to my neighbor for nearly 3 years after I began refusing to be her taxi driver. We had a decent relationship for some time. We were always cordial. My neighbor doesn't drive, and at the time I was a stay-at-home mom with a toddler, as well as 2 kids in school. She first began by coming by one afternoon, asking if I could take her and her kids to the dentist. Okay, sure, it's not too far. Then another time, her child needed to be seen at an urgent care, and she needed me to take them. But this is when issues first began. That particular day, I had a contractor at the house and needed to finish with this. She told me I needed to hurry. I told her that it wouldn't take long, but if this is actually an emergency, then she needs to call emergency services or an Uber. She said it would wait. So my contractor is done and I go and pick them back up. Well, this goes on off and on for a while. Frankly, it's a little frustrating, but I'm trying to be neighborly, but then she began flipping a little. One day I get a text message asking if I've left to take my kids to school, and I had. She said her kids overslept and she wanted me to drop them off for her. Our kids go to different schools, by the way. I say yes, but she needs to come too because I won't sign them in. She agreed, and overall, I spent an extra 40 minutes out of my morning with my toddler who doesn't like being in the car. But okay, again, being neighborly. And that's when I start to notice a pattern. Her kids keep oversleeping and she keeps knocking on my door or texting. I often try to run errands after I drop my kids off from school, so I'm usually out doing things. So when I get a text saying, "Where are you? Will you be back from taking your kids to school soon? I need a ride." I just tell them, no, I won't be home. And then she asks if my husband can do it since he works from home. No, he's working. She had the audacity to get snippy and then say that she would have to call them out of school again and that they've missed too much. I just ignore that and went about my errands. I get another text message asking where I am and when I'll be home. I tell them that I'm the next city over and that I have no idea when I'll be back, telling her that she needs to call an Uber. She claims Uber is unsafe and that she'll get hurt. Then she says that she will get a ride to her apartment in that same city and that I can wait for her to be done and to take her home. I ignore her after that. Next week, I'm at another doctor's office far from home. Again, I get a text. This time she says, "Where are you? You're not home again and your husband won't answer the door. We need a ride to the dentist in 30 minutes or I will have to cancel the visit. Can you hurry home?" At this point, I am beyond tired of being questioned about my whereabouts. My husband doesn't even do that, so I just ignore her. We finish the visit and I take my kids to get treats. Then a text message pops up and says, "Are you coming? I need you to hurry." Again, I ignore it. And at this point, I'm just over all of this. That's when she texts me back and says, "Never mind, we missed it." The final straw was 2 weeks later. She meets me outside while I'm doing yard work. She said that she got her kids signed up for an orthodontist and that now she needs me to start driving them to their monthly appointments and that she will pay for gas in the process. But here's the kicker. The orthodontist is 40 minutes away on a bad part of town. And considering that the appointment will take up to an hour as well as another 40 minutes back, I'm going to be doing this every month for roughly 2 years. She said I could just wait with my toddler nearby, or I could go shopping while they do this. And that's when I told her flat out no. I told her that I don't like being far from the kids while they're in school in case I've got to get them, and my toddler will be miserable, and that's just too far. I asked her why she would book an orthodontist that far away when she doesn't even drive, and she said because it was cheaper. She kept arguing, but I stayed firm in my no. She was very frustrated with me, and had been frustrated as I hadn't been around more lately to help out. My husband is mad at this point and had told me to stop completely because she's using me and he doesn't like that. And you know what? He was right. I told her I won't change my mind. She grew very cold towards me. She ended up finding another poor unfortunate soul to start giving her a ride. But then 1 month later, her ride bailed on her and she came again and asked me if I would take her again. But still the answer was no. And as I explained it last time, that's not changing. She was furious and legitimately never spoke to me again. And you can bet I will never reach out to this lady for anything ever again. Talk about making the right decision. This lady was 100% using you. Imagine being so selfish that you harass your neighbor for a ride side anytime you need to get things done. I have run into people like this who just take advantage of your kindness, all for the sake of them getting stuff done. There's never a thank you, they never pay you back, they never decide to help you out in return. The kindness is not reciprocated, and it is absolutely miserable dealing with these people, because I don't think they actually care, and the person in this story absolutely fits the freaking bill. They took advantage of your kindness for so long. You have way more patience than I do, because there's no way I would have put up with that. People like this absolutely make me sick. Like, if this lady really has this many reasons to go out driving, especially 40 minutes away, then they need to get their life together and learn to drive. Because honestly, this is not a you problem. This is definitely a they problem. They didn't take the time to either have their license, or they obviously don't have their life together enough to be able to have a license and drive. It's absolutely ridiculous, and I'm so glad you cut this parasite out of your life, because you, your husband, and your toddler do not need to deal with that. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for cutting contact with my family after they turned my mother's life as well as mine into a living nightmare? I'm a 22-year-old female, and it's been 7 years, and I still haven't talked to an entire side of my family. Here's the thing. My grandmother is the kind of woman that privileges one kid above the other. She always gave more to my uncle than to my mother, to the point that my uncle turned into a complete spoiled brat. He's the type of guy that would cut off contact with you for 3 years without any news, all because he didn't go to his son's birthday party, even though you had a good reason not to go. Yeah, this guy's a winner. As for my grandmother, she always treated my mother as an ungrateful child, and she was always taking her anger out on my mother. She also didn't hesitate to tell her she was an unwanted child. When my mother was 5 years old, my grandmother told her the only reason why she was born was because her husband wanted a daughter. As she grew up, my mother started to rebel, and even decided to cut contact with her mother after my grandfather's passing. But then she became pregnant with my older sister, and felt that she was being unfair. One of my grandfathers passed away at an early age, and the other one left without a trace, so she wanted us to at least have both of our grandmothers. It went well eventually until my mother became pregnant with me. I was born the same day as my grandfather's death. Because of this, my grandmother hates me and wanted to show it to me. She was always acting nice around me, but she was always strict with me, to the point that when my sister and I came back from a trip we did, I ran to my mother while crying as if I just saw the devil himself. That's how bad she was when I was on this trip. She was also neglectful towards me when she was helping my mother babysitting my sister and I. And I don't mean it in an emotional way. One day she made me swim in nothing but underwear under a blazing sun, although my mother packed a swimsuit for me. I ended up being burned very badly on my whole body. Or she would let some strangers look after me in a foreign country while we were on a trip. Another thing that she does is that she never wants to celebrate my birthday on the actual day itself. Eventually, I would understand why this date affected my grandmother so much, and how my grandfather's loss was so devastating to her. But she got rid of every single one of his belongings. She went as far as refusing to give anything to my mother. To this day, I don't own anything from my grandfather's. The only thing I have from him is an old vacation picture where he's barely visible. I started to realize she actually hates me when I was around 13 years old. My mother still had to listen to my grandmother's improper comments, but she acted as if it was nothing, for the sake of my sister and I. As for me, she always treated me like a worthless girl. One day when she came to visit us, she even stood before me, looked me in the eyes, and then pretended like she didn't even know my name. To make it clear, she has a very good memory, and even if she didn't, my mother talked with her every week, even though we live very far away from where she lives. She did remember my name. I tried to not think much of it, just so I wouldn't hurt my mother, but I couldn't take any more when she started assaulting my sister. Before my sister was born, my grandmother decided to make a bank account for my sister and I. She would fill it until we were 21 years old. My sister is 5 years older than me, and my grandmother started to harass her about what she would do with her money, although none of us knew what amount my sister would receive. We don't care about money. In fact, my sister and I didn't want it, but I still lost my temper when this happened. My parents, my sister, and I all had to go through a lot, so we're pretty close. Also, because of that, we're pretty protective of each other. And since I inherited my mother's personality, I felt the urge to protect my shy, quiet, and overly nice older sister. My mother and I ended up having a huge argument with my grandmother, and we didn't talk to her for a very long time. That was until my mother's uncle, with which she was close to, passed away. As I said before, we live far from the rest of the family, so my grandmother had to tell us about it. My sister sister and I decided to accompany my mother to the funeral to give her support. When we arrived, no one was at the graveyard, so we called my grandmother and asked where they were. That's when she gave us the true address to the graveyard. We ended up arriving when everybody was about to leave. My mother had to listen to improper comments and couldn't say goodbye to her uncle properly. After that, my grandmother told my mother to come and take back the last thing she still had from her. And since then, we stopped talking to each other. I learned she's saying to everyone that she is the victim and that my parents, my sister and I, are just ungrateful morons. My mother suffers a lot from this whole story. I still see her cry about it from time to time. She also apologizes countless times to my sister and I because she feels guilty of giving us a grandmother like that. And I must say that I suffer from this too. I try not to show it for my mother's sake, but I still think about it a lot, and I still don't understand what I did wrong. Sometimes I even catch myself thinking I would rather have her pass away and instead have my grandfather be alive. And when I think about this, I feel like a monster. So am I the jerk for wanting to cut off this side of my family out of my life? No, you are not the jerk. Your grandma is a psychopath. As someone who has a side of their family who fits this description almost perfectly, I know exactly what you're going through. And I understand the stress that comes along with having relatives that treat you like absolute garbage. A lot of the bad talking and the name calling and the crappy treatment, for the most part, I can understand as just being their personality traits and something that if you ever see them again, you'll probably have to put up with. It doesn't mean that it's okay, but at least you can know what you're going to get into if you ever decide to come in contact with them again. And for me personally, there's no way in the world I'm going to be treated like that. Not for a second, especially not my family. But the fact that your grandmother gave you the wrong address for this funeral for your uncle is absolutely unexcusable. I can let go the fact that they're terrible people and they pretend to not know your name. I can get over the fact that they treated your mom like garbage and then they feel the need to try and treat you like garbage as well. But on the one day when everyone is full of such sad emotions and everyone is feeling incredibly vulnerable, she decides to pull this garbage just so your mother can't say goodbye to your uncle basically is absolutely unacceptable. I can't imagine not being able to say goodbye to a family member of mine simply because somebody in my extended family decided to be incredibly toxic and just cruel. Like, there's no excuse for that. Like, that is such a low, disgusting, vile thing to do to somebody. So are you the jerk for cutting off contact with this family? No, I would have done that years ago. Sometimes the best antidote for toxic family members is to get away from them. Absolute distance and time will definitely heal all wounds. And I think the best thing you could do for you and your family, in my opinion, based on what you've described, is to move forward without any of those people in your life. As someone who has done something similar to that, I can tell you that you'll get a lot more peace in your life and you'll overall probably be a lot happier. But that's just my opinion. What would you do if you're in this situation? Leave a comment down below. We'd love to hear it. My boyfriend made me take a polygraph test to see if I was sleeping around with someone else, and I failed the test miserably. I am a 24-year-old female, and I took a polygraph test back in March and April. My brother is a 30-year-old male, and he forced me to take one because he thought I was spending some quality time with someone at 6 in the morning while he left in the morning to go for a run. We live in a small town of about 20,000 people. I am personally not from that town. I come from a city about 2 hours away, and I have never been to the town we live in until I met him. In fact, I was never allowed to go out by myself. I never knew anyone there but my boyfriend and his family. I never spent quality time with anybody else, if you know what I mean, at any point during our relationship. So we drove 2 hours to the closest city, and I paid for everything as always. I paid for gas, food, and the $300 polygraph test. The results came back, and the polygrapher said I failed miserably. He told me I was trying to control my breathing, which I know I wasn't. I am always taking deep breaths here and there. I was nervous, even though I told my boyfriend I wasn't, because I didn't want a reason for him to be sketched out or for him to be mean to me because of me being nervous. And since I was nervous, I was taking deep breaths. But I wasn't trying to. It was just my nerves getting to me. The polygrapher said I scored a -13. I don't even know what that means. He said that I double failed. Apparently this means I failed miserably. Does anyone know anything about this or know anything anything about what this means and how that is even possible. I need some advice of what this means because I stormed out. I was so upset because I don't know how I could have failed miserably, especially because I've never spent any quality time with anyone while my boyfriend goes running. What do I do? You need to pack your things and get out of that house. No sane individual would have their significant other take a polygraph test just to see whether you are loyal or not. Like, that is crazy. Like, why would you even begin to agree to take one of these? If my girlfriend came up to me and said, "You've been cheating," and I looked at her and said, no, I'm not. And then she said, "We're taking a polygraph. We're going to prove it right now." I would look her square in the eyes and say, "We're breaking up." Not because I have anything to hide, but because it's the principle of the matter. What is this? Mission Impossible? I'm not out here trying to save the world or steal the Declaration of Independence, lady. I'm trying to make breakfast and you think I'm cheating. Screw that, bro. Get out while you can. That's like some American Psycho level crazy. So yeah, that's what I would do if I was in your situation. I would pack my things and leave. And I know, and I'm sorry that this doesn't answer any of your questions regarding the polygraph test, but why on earth would you agree to take one in the first place? There's also an extra layer of this that is also really funny if you think about it. What if the original poster is absolutely lying? What if they really are spending some quality time with some random nobody while her boyfriend is going off for a run at 6 in the morning, and she's desperately searching online trying to figure out why she couldn't beat the system? I really don't know which one's worse, agreeing to do the polygraph test in the first place or failing the polygraph test and trying to figure out ways to get past the system. Whichever reality is correct in this situation, I wish the original poster the best of luck in getting out of that house, because even the initial suggestion of, "Oh, you're going to take a polygraph test," seems very weird and sketchy to me. And trust me when I say this, based off of no other information about this individual, you can do so much better. My dad is a complete control freak and is absolutely ruining the experience of me building my own home. For some backstory, I'm a 35-year-old male and I'm currently living with my dad at my sister's house. Their house is big and she and her family occupy the upper levels, while my dad and I live downstairs in the decently sized apartment basically. The reason being, I've bought a house myself last year and it needed some heavy renovations. My mother and grandmother passed away in the span of last year, both 6 months apart, and it had hit us quite a bit financially. So in order to afford both the mortgage and the renovations, it's been decided that I'll move in with my old man and to also keep him company after my mother's death, and that he'll be helping me with the house. To describe my dad, he is, to be polite, a really bad control freak, and it's like I'm back to being 14 years old again. As far as I remember, his only ways of communicating with us are ordering us around and berating us, and in that order. We have nothing in common. I can't start a conversation with him without it turning about me being a naive idiot who knows nothing about life. He also complains about really petty things. Apparently to him, I hold my fork wrong, and I should also not apparently sleep past 9 o'clock because other adult people are already up and doing whatever other adult people do for their responsibilities. So after working all day, all I want is to be left alone and not be subjected to his life lessons, which rarely happens because I have basically zero privacy, and he just loves to tell me that I'm a failure of an adult. So today I left work a bit later because I hate leaving stuff unfinished, and the client wanted his stuff done as soon as possible. If half an hour extra would mean I wouldn't have to return later, it works for me, which earned me another lesson about how I should prioritize family matters first and ditch work 4 hours early if necessary. And yeah, with that same logic, I would go ahead and get fired, but for some reason he doesn't seem to understand the nuance. This is all because he asked me to drive by the house in order to check the work done, and I, for some reason, did not ask the workers to stay past 6 o'clock at night in order to discuss things with them. I just knew the evening would be terrible, and you know what? It was. See, while I've been admiring my new walls and the paint, I've noticed a note in my mailbox. Some dude wanted to know if I wanted to keep the old doors, and if not, he wondered if he could have them. Great, I thought. I wouldn't need to throw them away myself, and I told my dad about it, but that ended up being a massive mistake. When my dad asks for something, it's rather an order, if anything. He'll tell you to do something and it has to be done, and he said it has to be done right away. So here I am, still chewing on my dinner, calling the guy about the doors. Per usual protocol, he's hovering around telling me what to say and how to say it, while rolling his eyes when I tell him to please go away and to give me some distance. Because let's be frank, it's annoying and it's really frustrating, and he's been doing it for years. He can only hear my side of the conversation, and the door guy basically confirms by himself what my dad wants to know. But because I did not ask in the way that my dad would want me to, it made him increasingly annoyed. By the end of the call, he's been yelling at me and calling me names, which nobody should utter to anybody. And after that, I laid into him because I don't like being insulted, even less by my own family. He then went to his room and pouted for 5 minutes, then went back to me and threw his copy of the house keys in my face, telling me that I'm on my own and that he would not help me with the house anymore, which, by the way, is just an empty threat he likes to throw around when he can't get his way. I told him that the next time he calls me names and acts like a child, I will deck him so hard that he'll need a straw for his next dinner. As you can imagine, after that, we're not really talking to each other now. And honestly, the silence is golden. Sounds like you have a rough situation on your hands. I can completely understand where you're coming from, but I can also see where this dad is coming from. It seems like they're definitely grieving the loss of their wife. So I kind of cut him a little bit of slack, but I also know what it's like to have somebody hanging over your shoulder trying to tell you what you can and can't do with a certain thing. It is incredibly frustrating. I definitely would not have said, hey, I'm going to deck you if you do that again. I think that's a bad idea. But other than that, I think he handled it pretty well. And personally, I would take his empty threat seriously. If he doesn't want to help with the house anymore, you just make sure you never give those keys back and you call it good. He's no longer a part of the house. So best of luck with navigating this, and hopefully things get better between you and your dad. An entitled Karen demands that I give my Nintendo Switch to her demon child while we're on a flight, but after I kindly say no, she freaks out on me and makes a scene. This just happened the other day, and after sharing the story with my friends and family, a few of them suggested I share this online. The scene is a Southwest airline flight. I was sitting in a window seat next to two lovely ladies, and directly horizontal from us was an empty seat, a mom and her son. The flight was taking off. For those who don't know, you are required to stay in your seat and keep your seatbelt on for the beginning of the flight until the captain says otherwise. I was strapped in my seat and decided to take out my Nintendo Switch from my carry-on beneath my feet. Excuse me, ma'am? I didn't realize it at first that the mother in the seats horizontal from me was trying to get my attention. She unbuckled her belt and moved to the empty seat by the aisle closer to me. Ma'am, with the video game? I lifted my head, but the stranger next to me nudged me as well. They told me that the lady wants to get my attention. So I turned my head to see this woman leaning across the aisle with her hands on the armrest of the aisle seat in my row. Sorry, she began. I just wanted to know if there's any way that my son could use that game for a little while. I was a little confused that she would even ask this, but I said, oh, I'm so sorry. My Nintendo Switch is actually really important to me. I don't feel comfortable giving it to anyone I don't know. I don't even let my sisters play with it. I was going to continue from here, but the woman cut me off. She says, oh, my son's not like most kids. He's not destructive. His cousin has one of those and he knows how to play it. She smiled and put her hand out expectingly. The two women seated next to me looked at me as if they were also in disbelief. I said again, I'm sorry, I just don't feel comfortable. I brought it for me. Visibly upset, this woman in a huff says, how old are you? She said this condescendingly and retracted her hand, slapping it on her leg as if she's frustrated. I told her that I'm 25, even though that doesn't matter with the situation. At this point, I was growing exceptionally uncomfortable. She began sounding very agitated at this point as she said, well, my son is 8. This is an hour and 45-minute flight, and he just wants something to do. He can't see it for a few minutes. I tell her, no, I am not comfortable with that. I'm sorry, but I'm expecting you to understand since this is my property. I put my head down and I unpaused my game as to ignore anything she had further to say. At this point, she was genuinely livid. Are you serious? She then addresses her kid and says, well, sorry, buddy. Not everyone knows how to share. The woman said this to her kid sitting next to her. Her child started whining and kicking the seat in front of him. Thanks for this, she said to me. A sweet kid just wants to share with you, and you're being ignorant about it. Before I even opened my mouth, one of the ladies in my row snapped back at her. They asked her, how dare you bring that kind of energy on this plane? This lady backed me up too, saying that I was very kind about saying that I don't want to give my electronics to a stranger and that it made me uncomfortable. But this entitled Karen was not having it. She actually said, she's an adult and can't share with a kid for a few minutes of a nearly 2-hour flight. The woman in my row responded and said, you should have brought something for him to do then. And that actually shut her up for good. At the end of the flight, the woman collected her luggage from the overhead bins, looked at me and said, "I hope you're happy going against God's word, not sharing with a child." Some of the people around us giggled like small children. I'm sure that they overheard the drama at the beginning of the flight. I've come across some entitled Karens in my life, but this strange lady definitely took the cake. Why is it that stuff like this never happens when I'm around? It is like my dream to watch this all go down. This was hilarious. This entitled Karen actually wanted this original poster to give them their Nintendo Switch just so their stupid gremlin child could have something to do on the flight. Like, I'm sorry, that's not anybody's fault except for that terrible Karen parent. And the fact that they tried to guilt trip them no matter what is further evidence that this lady does this all the time. You can bet she pulls the Karen card and uses her kid as a weapon to try and get whatever she wants under every circumstance. It's so totally unfair and it's absolutely ridiculous. Thankfully, everybody else had some common sense and came to this lady's defense. And I've been on those kinds of flights where you have that entitled brat sitting nearby, and it's bad enough you gotta listen to them screaming and whining, but compound that by having some entitled Karen trying to boss you around and practically take your belongings. Like, I'm pretty sure that kid would have never given her back her Nintendo Switch and probably would have tried to lie and say, "No, it's mine." So good for them for putting their foot down and telling this lady no, because sometimes these entitled Karens need to be put in their place and absolutely shut down. I finally meet my long-distance boyfriend, and I can't help but feel a little disappointed. I have been in a long-distance relationship with my boyfriend, John, that's not his real name, for about a year now. We live on opposite sides of the country, and I flew out to meet him in person a couple of weeks ago. Now, he is funny and kind, and we share a lot of the same opinions on things, and he's quite attractive. We don't have too much in common, except for both being on the artistic side, but that was never a big thing for me. As long as you put in effort and you communicate openly and get along well, I believe many relationships can work out. We have both sent pictures of ourselves and FaceTime before, so there was no chance of catfishing or anything like that. When I was going to meet him, I put on my nicest clothes I brought, a somewhat simple but nice top, some loose breathable slacks, a pair of plain flats, a sun hat, and I put on a little bit of eyeliner. It was a simple but elegant look, as my friend put it, who came with me on the trip. I was nervous but really excited to see him at the same time. I was keeping him updated on where I was so we could meet up, and he seemed like he was getting cold feet. He was telling me he didn't have enough gas to come meet me. For reference, it's about an hour drive for him. I offered to send him some money for the drive, which I did. He's actually asked me for gas money a couple of times and has yet to pay me back despite having a job. When he gets there, he has a t-shirt on and cargo shorts with boots that seem a bit too big for him. I don't think too much of it at the time, but in hindsight, I guess I felt overdressed. I don't know. We walk around for a bit and then we sit on a bench for a second because my legs were getting weak from how nervous I was. We hold hands for a little bit, and after a while he tries to kiss me on the lips. Now, I'll admit it, I haven't had my first kiss yet, and I stopped him because I'm pretty sure I'd faint if we kissed, and I didn't feel ready after meeting only a few minutes before. We sat holding hands for a little longer and got up and walked around. As we were walking around, I noticed his fingernails were much longer than mine and had dirt underneath them. I noted that he has a manual labor job, so that explains the dirt under the nails. After a while, he had to leave, and we parted ways after a kiss on the cheek. Now I'm home and I'm not sure how I feel. This is the longest relationship I've ever had, and I guess I feel, well, a little disappointed. Like something very wonderful would happen, and instead I just felt okay. What should I do going forward after making this realization? I don't want to hurt his feelings, but I know if I bring it up to him, I'll word it horribly and do more damage than anything. I'm very new to relationships, so I'm not sure what I should do. I can totally understand where you're coming from. Meeting your online boyfriend or girlfriend for the first time would probably be a little bit shocking. I mean, you've never actually met this person, but still you have such an intense bond with them that you love them. So seeing them face to face for the first time is probably a little scary, if not a little bit underwhelming. I think the best thing about all of this, though, is that you have met them and now you know what to expect, especially if you decide to keep this relationship going. And here's the thing, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Like, there's no way that you can try and force this and make it happen, because that wouldn't be fair for yourself, and it especially wouldn't be fair for him either. Like, if after this meetup you still feel like, hey, I don't really like him anymore, then it is what it is. Being around someone physically really does make a difference when it comes to whether you like them or not. You can idolize and make this ideal person out of who you see online, and you can spend hours with these people constantly, but in my opinion, until you meet them in person, you don't really know them that well. So hopefully this relationship still works out for you, and hopefully you meeting him in person didn't completely throw you off, because it sounds like you two have a good relationship together, and it would be a shame for that to just get thrown away, all because you finally met in person. I let a girl sit on my thigh, and now my girlfriend is incredibly angry at me, and I'm not sure what to do. I went to hang out with some friends at one of my friends' house, and my girlfriend came along with us. There were like 9 of us in total there, and we were just talking, eating, and drinking. After we played a drinking game, one of my friends was definitely under the influence and came over to where my girlfriend and I were sitting and cuddled and started talking to us. After talking for a bit, she wanted to sit and asked my girlfriend if she could sit on my leg. My legs were spread out in a V shape. My girlfriend said okay for some reason, and the girl sat on my left leg and had her arm around me to hold herself up. My girlfriend looked pretty upset by this girl, who was very drunk at the time, and it wasn't like I could just kick her off my leg and have her on the ground. We were talking for like 5 more minutes, but my girlfriend sounded very angry, and that's when she said that she's gonna go throw up from the alcohol and went off to the bathroom. I got up and seated the girl on the chair I was sitting on and went to go check on her. She wasn't throwing up, but told me that we were going home. So we walked back out to where everyone else was, and my girlfriend announced that we were leaving. When we got out, I ordered an Uber to drop us off at her apartment. When we were waiting for the Uber, she wasn't talking to me, and when I tried to talk to her, she would respond angrily and make a weird remark. When I asked her what she was upset about, she said it was obvious. I asked if it was the girl sitting on my leg, and she said yes. I was so confused because she said the girl can't sit on my lap. I asked her why she said the girl could sit on my lap, and then she said it's not like she could have said no. Personally, this doesn't make sense to me as to why she couldn't say no to this girl sitting on my lap. Like, how am I supposed to know that this is not allowed? So I told her that she's blaming me for no reason. When we were in the Uber, she yelled at me in front of the driver and started crying. When we got to her apartment and walked in, she told me to sleep on the floor with no blanket and no pillows. I said I'd rather go home and sleep on my own bed. Then I walked out of her apartment and went to my own. It's the next morning now, and she hasn't responded to any of my text messages. I don't want another miscommunication error, so I want to talk to her face to face, but she's not responding. I'm not sure what to do. Was I in the wrong for letting this girl sit on my lap, even though my girlfriend said it was okay? Who's at fault here? What should I do? I think you're both at fault. Both of you are complete idiots. Your girlfriend should have never said yes to this drunk lady sitting on your lap, and you should have never let that drunk lady sit on your lap ever, under any circumstance. Your girlfriend is literally sitting there right next to you. Why on earth would you let that happen? If anything, your girlfriend should have sat on your lap and the drunk girl sat on the other chair. That would have been best case scenario. But in that same vein of thought, the girlfriend then acting like this is your fault and solely your fault is completely ridiculous. In my honest opinion, both of you are the problem here. Both of you made an equally stupid decision, and both of you are to blame for this situation going where it is. If a drunk girl came up to me, regardless of what my girlfriend said, I would absolutely 100% say, no, you're not sitting on my lap. I don't know who this chick is. I'm not interested in her. I'm interested in my girlfriend who's sitting right there. I'm not about to compromise that by letting some drunk chick sit next to me and cuddle up on me. No, thank you. And your girlfriend saying that she couldn't say no to this lady is the biggest cop-out ever. If she actually had your best interest in mind, with any intention of trying to protect her boyfriend, she would have said no on the spot. But she said yes, put her foot in her mouth, and then tried to blame you, which is just not okay. But overall, both of you are equally stupid, and you both need to figure out your stuff and grow up. Because allowing some girl to sit on your lap, whether your girlfriend stupidly said yes or not, is not okay. My husband wants me to keep my job for the benefits, and I want to pursue my passion at my dream job that just opened up. And I'm honestly not sure what to do. My husband and I have been married for a year, and we were dating for 3 years prior to getting married when we met in college. During college, I was working multiple jobs to keep me afloat. My family is not in the picture. While in college, I landed one internship with an organization that I loved. I now work for that organization full time, and I am not enjoying the work culture at all. The political games, the backstabbing coworkers, and the overly into themselves poor management across the organization makes me literally sick. The job itself has great time off and decent health benefits, as well as a flexible schedule. I love 50% of what I do, but I feel as though I only get paid the bare minimum, which might be standard for a nonprofit. While in college, I also volunteered to work with students because I had no happiness in my life. The kids brought me joy, and I thought graduating and landing a full-time job would make the world brighter, but I'm miserable sitting behind a desk all day. A part-time teaching position came up recently, a job I think would check many boxes for me. My partner, however, does not want me to take it because my current full-time job offers great benefits that I would lose. Mind you, we both met in college, and I feel too young to be settling down at a bleak office job. My husband insists that I'm making my way towards becoming a leader and making change at the organization that I currently work for. Should I follow my dream and leave the plush full-time job, or make responsible decisions based on my partner's thoughts? What should I do? This is a really tricky one because I can see both sides of this. On one hand, you really hate your full-time job, but there is some good benefits that come along with it. On the other hand, you have this dream job coming up, but it might not have the same benefits that your current job currently offers you. It's a really tricky place to be. The first thing I would personally look at would be if we can actually afford me switching jobs at the moment. It's great that your dream job opened up, like I'm really happy for you. But if your family finances cannot support you switching to a part-time position when you've currently been enjoying a full-time position that pays you quite well from what it sounds like, it might not be the wisest decision off the bat to go, okay, let's quit my full-time job to get my dream job that pays significantly less. That could really make a dent in just about everything in your life. And I don't think you should completely ignore your partner's advice on this one. I think they want the best thing for you, but at the same time, they also want to make sure that you're both financially stable. That is really important to consider. And if you're just switching jobs simply because you found your dream job, then personally, you need to make sure you can afford that switch. And guess what? If you can afford that switch and this dream job will somehow make ends meet and it won't be a financial burden, then absolutely make the switch. Who cares what anybody thinks? Maybe if you lay everything out and show your significant other that yes, this can work for us, they might be more willing to let you take that step, and they probably would be more supportive in the long run. So whatever you decide to do, I hope it works out for you. And I hope that whatever you decide to do, your significant other is there to support you. My partner is ending our relationship while I'm 34 weeks pregnant. I'm a 32-year-old female and my partner is 48 years old. He just told me today that he can't do it anymore. He says that he can't be in our relationship because he doesn't feel respected. The truth is, I just feel tolerated. We have the same thoughts about each other. If I think he's self-centered, he thinks the same about me. I haven't been able to work during the pregnancy, and while I'm receiving FMLA and unemployment, he goes out to work every day. I contribute to the household expenses and he contributes about 20% to the household duties. I pay the car note of the car he drives to make money. He got into a car accident that caused little damage, but I'm the one who is working with the companies for the repairs. We've had a broken toilet seat for months and he's done nothing to fix it. He washes the clothes once a month, we don't have a washer and dryer in our place, and I can't carry the bags. The clothes need to be washed so bad, 3 huge bags, and still it's not getting done. I don't even have a dry towel. I literally sit in the house naked most days. I don't buy any summer clothing for my growing body because we have to save money, which I totally understand. But now I can't fit my pre-pregnancy summer clothes anymore. I clean the bathroom, I wash the dishes all the time. I do 75% of the cooking, and I get government assistance with the food, but I also buy out of pocket. He buys out of pocket too. I also buy restaurant food because I don't want to cook all the time, and it's blazing in our place, and I don't want to stand on my feet and cook in the kitchen at this stage of my pregnancy. He conveniently doesn't eat restaurant food, except he does, especially when I'm buying it. I try to tidy up the rest of our place as much as I can, but with no dressers or drawers or any place to put anything, it's always looking messy, which stresses me out. I don't make the bed every day, which for most of this pregnancy is an air mattress. I finally broke and bought a mattress after thinking he would get one. I've said it to him for months, we need one because it's uncomfortable and hard for me to get in and out of the air mattress. This month I had to help with rent. That's his responsibility and I didn't get the money for that back. But when he paid my phone bill because I didn't have it because I helped with the rent, he expected that back, which I did. He says he can't do it anymore because he's out working and he's hungry, and I should have his meals ready for him. When I wake up after I do my morning routine, I should call him and tell him to come to breakfast. When he comes in from work at night, he shouldn't have to wait for his dinner. I've asked him to let me know when he's on his way so I can fix those things, but his response is to cook it anyway and to tell him to come and get it. He's also upset because I stream a lot of the day, sometimes just to have noise in the house. I don't talk to anyone, we don't go anywhere, I don't have any books to read, most of our things are in storage. I did crochet a top last week though, but that's about it. Recently he's been building his social media presence and needed a website to create products. I designed the website, the logo, the products, and everything while he makes videos and posts them on TikTok. He didn't like the website and I redid it. Nothing to be done with that yet, to be honest, but I'm sure something will come about it. When he had his other business ventures, I was there with him to do whatever I could. He wanted to start a restaurant, I was there creating the menu and coming up with a system to streamline everything. He stopped doing that because he got stressed out dealing with people. I just don't know how I feel right now. I think I'm just indifferent and I just don't care anymore. I'm also upset because I have this baby to take care of and I need a work from home job in order to provide. The plan has always been that I'll be a stay-at-home mom as we don't want the baby to be in daycare. I'm going to talk to my employer next week to see about going to work until my due date to at least be bringing in some income or suffer through doing Uber. I feel like I can't talk to my family about this because they don't like him at all, and we've had problems all throughout our relationship, and I'm sure they don't want to hear about this stuff anymore. I can't stay with my family because they all smoke and won't stop just because I'm pregnant. They are advocates for smoking through the pregnancy, and I am not. My one sister lives in a one-bedroom apartment, and I can't bring my bed there. He says that he's finally getting his old car fixed that's been down for more than a year, so I can do whatever I want. I worked in customer service and sales before this, and would really want a work-from-home job doing anything I'm capable of in order to provide. I'm upset, and I really don't know what to do. I think the person you're with is a complete scumbag. This guy is an absolute piece of garbage. You're about to have a baby and he wants to break up? He wants to end this relationship because he doesn't feel respected? I mean, how selfish can you get? From what's being described, this woman has done everything for this man, and he has the audacity to turn this around and make it about himself. What a piece of garbage. But honestly, this lady will be so much better without him, and it doesn't help that you have family that are not understanding and they've already written off this relationship as something that's never going to work out. So I honestly wish you the best, and I hope things work out for the better. My scumbag boyfriend had an affair with my therapist after she pressured him into doing it, and I simply don't know what to do now. I have been in therapy for about a year now because I was on the verge of a burnout and still had trauma to work through from my previous relationship, which has negatively impacted my current relationship with my boyfriend. While my current relationship has been an increasingly frequent topic in my therapy sessions, I was honestly there because of psychological pressure regarding my studies and my work. Lately, I've been feeling increasingly worse and haven't been able to handle the pressure around me as well, which has also put a strain on my relationship. Because I wasn't being completely honest with my therapist and her suggestions weren't really working, we agreed to include my boyfriend in some of the sessions. These were to be one-on-one sessions so that she could get his perspective and create a plan that would take his needs into consideration as well. My therapist has been very helpful in helping me better reflect on my emotions and better articulating my needs. The better I could deal with the pressure, the better things went between me and my boyfriend. After a while, I noticed that my therapist was acting increasingly strange, whereas before she was very neutral and asked more pointed questions that allowed to reflect on my own behavior in relation to my relationship and patterns of behavior. She increasingly began to badmouth my relationship and blame me for my relationship problems. I found this very strange, and I couldn't explain where the sudden change came from, but I didn't think too much of it. Maybe I was just on the fence about how badly I treat my boyfriend. Fast forward to now. Yesterday, I was at my boyfriend's house, and we were having a nice day, and we decided to watch a movie together before bedtime. Out of nowhere, he suddenly had tears in his eyes, and then he confessed to me that he has been having an affair with her, my therapist. He cried the whole time and reassured to me that he regrets it and doesn't want to lose me. In his words, my therapist put so much pressure on him that he didn't know what to do and he couldn't say no. I guess it started when she invited him to be in the one-on-one sessions. This was months ago, and since then, they have been meeting secretly. After he confessed to me, I drove home and cried the entire car ride home. No matter how long I think about it, what he says just doesn't make sense. How could he do this to me? Ever since he told me about his cheating, he has been constantly trying to call and text me. I have 13 missed calls from him and a lot of messages assuring me that I am his world, and he didn't want any of this to happen, but she pushed him into doing it. He has also been to my parents' house, and my mother has told me how miserable he is, and that he mentions over and over again that my therapist pressured him into doing this. So now I don't know what to do. How do I handle this situation? Part of me doesn't want to believe any of this and wants to believe him, but the other part of me knows that what he did is unexcusable. What should I do? First and foremost, you need to report the therapist. That is so unethical, it's not even funny. Like, this person can possibly lose their license as a therapist because of this. Like, it's that bad. This literally goes against everything that they learn with like ethics codes, as well as boundaries, as well as client benefit. Like, this is horrible. This goes against everything. This person used all the information that was given them not to help and to treat these people, but instead to use it against this lady so she could steal her boyfriend? Like, what is going on? But that does not mean that your boyfriend is off the hook. He cheated on you. And that is something you definitely need to consider regardless of what you decide to do. His initial instinct when this lady started coming on to him and forcing him to get away from you should have been to turn around and run away. But instead, he entertained the idea and he let this lady manipulate him. And honestly, that is not acceptable either. So this is a really tough one, but honestly, there are red flags all over the place that you really need to consider. And regardless of what happens, I think most of all, I really hope you're able to get this therapist in trouble because God knows what she's already done to other people in other situations. And if you can play a role in stopping that, then that's probably the best thing that'll come out of this. My ex-girlfriend is upset that I changed the Netflix password, and I'm not sure what to do about it. My girlfriend broke up with me last Tuesday, and it was pretty heavy. I spent a week asking her to take me back and forgive me every day until I got tired and just stopped. I always chase her. We've never gone more than 10 hours without speaking until yesterday. I didn't say a word to her for 24 hours until something happened and I had to clear something up. But she was telling me she doesn't love or care about me. She told me to leave her alone, yet she didn't block me like she normally would, mostly out of anger. I mean, I did mess up and she has every right to hate me and never speak to me again. So I changed my Netflix and YouTube TV password. I also followed some celebrity girl she was upset about, all on impulse. I thought it was over for good. The things she said were hurtful, but I guess I jumped ahead of myself because she's still pretty upset that I followed this celebrity. She's also super upset about me changing my passwords. It just doesn't make sense why she'd be so upset and bothered if she was really done with me anyways. It's conflicting. I mean, what would you do in this situation? She said she just wants to be friends, but to me, she didn't expect me to do that. I usually chase after her. I think she sees me changing it and following another girl as me actually moving on, which is what she doesn't want. She's just being difficult. I don't know. I would like to be with her still, but only if she goes and works on herself. I've never given this girl space. We've never gone a day without speaking, so she has to be losing her mind about the fact that I didn't say a word to her for an entire day, as well as other things that we normally do. She has her own Netflix account that she shares with her family, so no, I don't think she is using me. And she even had Netflix before we met. She just noticed that I logged out. And blocking her does nothing. I'm already blocked on Instagram and Twitter, but my accounts are public because of business, so it doesn't matter. My solution is giving her space and just focusing on myself. It feels like she wants to work stuff out, but she doesn't want to give in too easily. She's playing games with herself, really. Honestly, I'm not sure what I should do in this situation. I want to start off before I make any kind of comment on this by saying that the original poster is 28 years old and his ex-girlfriend is 24. When I first read this, I thought they were both teenagers in high school based on the way they're acting. Like, the amount of immaturity that I'm seeing in here is just really ridiculous. Like, I can kind of see why this girl broke up with the original poster, because the original poster is being really freaking weird. Like, I'm all about spending time with your significant other and taking care of each other and whatnot, but it sounds like this guy takes it to another extreme that just seems really obsessive. It seems like both of them are playing games to try and get the other person back, and it just does not seem like a healthy relationship for either of them. Like, if I'm going to be in a relationship, I want the other person to be dedicated to me. I don't want them to break up with me just to play games. Like, I don't got time for that, and I don't know many people who would. So yeah, both of these people in this situation absolutely need to grow up, because one of you is almost 30 and this behavior is really weird. Today I messed up by lying to my girlfriend about liking lemons for 3 years. I started dating my girlfriend close to 3 years ago, and at the start of the relationship, we were chatting, and a topic came up about things we like and dislike. It was a pretty typical conversation. I mentioned how I don't like to eat liver, and she mentioned that she's not a big fan of fish. It was nothing unusual. Then she asked if I like lemons. Now, I have nothing against lemons. I sometimes add a slice to my tea or drizzle a bit of lemon juice over fish, so I said, yeah, sure, I like lemons. She got all excited and told me that she loves lemons, which I found a little odd, but didn't think twice of it. The next time we met up, she came over with a lemon drink, asking about how she finally found a good brand with proper lemon flavor and wants to share it with me. I drank some and it was way too sour for me, but she was being all cute and excited and I didn't want to bring her down, so I lied and said that it was great. Sure, I should have been honest, but I figured it was a one-time thing, so what's the harm in making your girlfriend happy? Well, that's a big mistake. As it turns out, she was a huge fan of lemons, drinking lemon beverages, picking lemon-flavored options in restaurants, putting lemon juice on every meal, even just eating lemons by themselves. We haven't been dating long at that point, but even so, I honestly don't know how I didn't spot spot this sooner. She lived by herself, and her vegetable drawer in the fridge was always full of, guess what? That's right, lemons. It was bearable at first, but kept escalating, and I really wasn't sure what to do. She was always so excited about having this common interest with me, so I tried to find a way to get through it, like carrying sugar packets with me in secret to try and dull the sourness. A few months into the relationship, we've had to unexpectedly switch to dating long distance. Obviously, I was sad to be apart and only getting to see her for a few weeks at a time, but a part of me was kinda glad to be able to take breaks from the lemon frenzy. Since then, we've been dating long distance for over 2 years now, and we have both gotten used to the routine, and I thought that I had the situation under control for the most part. Well, I was wrong. This is where the mess up happened. While we were apart, she met up with her friends that she hasn't seen in a long while, and apparently her love for lemons came up in the conversation. She told them about how much she loves them, and how huge of a coincidence it was that I shared her love for them as well. Apparently her friends found the idea hilarious and started joking about how funny it would be if I was faking it for the last 3 years and constantly suffering whilst having to pretend that I love them just as much as she does. They even jokingly proposed for her to tell me that she has gotten sick of the lemons just to see what my reaction would be. Well, as you may have guessed where this is going, she ended up actually doing this, and I absolutely fell for it. Now she won't talk to me because she feels that I've been deceiving her for the past 3 years and that she can't trust me, especially since we're in a long distance relationship where trust is everything. I don't know how I'm going to fix this, but if you ever find yourself in a similar situation, for the love of God, don't pretend that you're into lemons. This is hilarious. You know how you make it up to her? Just get her a bag of lemons. How can someone possibly be this obsessed with lemons? Like, lemons are cool and all, but like all the time for every meal, everything, that's way too much. For me, that'd be a big red flag even going into this relationship. And yeah, you probably shouldn't have lied about liking lemons that much, but at the same time, who in their right mind could have seen it escalate to this? Like, okay, you probably should have said something sooner, but this lady is clearly unhinged when it comes to lemons. And to be completely honest with you, if this is the deal breaker, if this is what sets her over the edge and says, hey, I don't want to be with you, then my God, I think you dodged a big one, buddy. All jokes aside, I really hope this gets worked out. This seems like such a silly thing to get upset over, but I guess if it's your whole life, I can kind of see where it would get weird. I think your best bet, honestly, is just to apologize and explain yourself. Maybe even explain to her that, hey, I don't like lemons that much, but I do love you. I've been eating lemons for 3 years just to put up with it because I love you. If you say something like that, you might just win her back. But what would you do? Leave a comment down below. What would you do if you were in this situation? My friend comes over my house and proceeds to overstay her welcome. So my friend and I were chatting about stuff, just catching up a little bit, as we haven't talked in a small bit. Then she brings up the idea of her coming over to hang out for a little while. I said, sure, it'll just be a few hours long anyways, right? Well, I was wrong. Anywho, she comes over and all is well. We're laughing and joking about occasionally, but she is actually kind of ignoring me. I almost always had to start the 5-second conversations that we would have. Then when the time for her to leave rolls around, she suddenly asks if she can stay the night. All right, unplanned for sure, but I guess that's all right. She then finds my laptop and proceeds to use it. Yeah, I guess that's okay as well. A little weird, but sure. She logs into her account on a game, plays for a bit, then joins another game and suddenly starts a free art business exchange on Discord. It wouldn't be a problem except she used my account and she didn't get my permission. She got several firm no's after I found out, but wouldn't stop using my account. I felt a bit frustrated. After all, if she did a few clicks of digging, some of my information would be revealed to her. She could ruin everything and people wouldn't believe me if I told them that she did it. Knowing that, I felt a bit frustrated and anxious. And when begging her to stop wouldn't work, I did the only thing that came to mind. I reached for the mouse. As soon as I was super close to laying a firm grip on the mouse, she grabbed my arm and bit me. Not even a delicate bite either. She bit down with all of her might. It felt painful naturally. In a panic, I tried to fight back. But you know, can't really do much when your limbs are the equivalent to spaghetti. Once she lets go, she finally stopped using my account. However, the business still required my account since she was using my laptop, and I had to send her the photos of the drawings from my account. I sadly complied. It got annoying fast, since I constantly had to pause whatever I was doing to take pictures. She didn't consider it to be annoying though. At first, she tried to convince me to let her use my email. I gave her a firm no, she asked again, and then another no. After an evening of frustration, desperation, I went to go to bed. She then found a game she couldn't play because she didn't have the account age required. So she convinced me to play using the alternate account. Regretfully, I accepted again. I went to go to bed again, but I just couldn't. Everything was so loud. Before I knew it, it was 1 in the morning and I forced myself to sleep. I woke up pretty early, in fact. They were awake too, and not with a pretty sight. There were forgotten wrappers strewn everywhere, here and there, and a few empty glass bottles on the floor in a pile, left out for who knows how long. The once clean room looked dirty and abandoned in the spot she sat in. I felt a bit repulsed, to be honest. After a few hours had passed, she begged to stay another night. I didn't want to, but unfortunately my parents said yes. Thankfully, nothing really happened the next day, except I revealed to both of them the disgusting thing she did that night. After that, my parents were pretty quick to get her out of the house. I don't think she'll ever be spending the night at my house ever again. Yeah, I'll say so. She bit you on the arm. How are we just letting that slide? If anyone bites me on the arm, I'm immediately getting them out of the house. And depending on how severe it is, I'm calling the police. What on earth is that all about? It sounds like the situation involves people who are very young, so I can kind of understand how things went down, but please tell me that this is somehow your ex-friend now. The fact that you agreed to so many things and you were such a pushover when this person was invading all of your privacy, regardless of what they were doing, is really baffling. This is a solid lesson in the fact that you need to learn how to say no. And guess what? It is okay to say no. You don't have to cave in at anyone's demand at the drop of a hat. It is okay to say no, get lost. So yeah, next time think more carefully about who you let over to your house, because you might have somebody sleep over who's going to make a mess, use your laptop without your permission, and then bite you if you try to stop them. And honestly, nobody needs that. Today, I messed up by making my son cry at his birthday party. My son had his 3rd birthday party today. He had been asking for anything and everything Animal Crossing related, so me and my wife thought it would be a good idea to buy him a cake with his favorite character on top of it. The cake looked wonderful, and his favorite character, Isabelle, was standing on top of it. It was very well made too. The bakery told us that Isabelle was a molding made out of chocolate, so it was all edible. My son adored his cake and spent a full 10 minutes talking to the chocolate Isabelle, all before the guests arrived. Soon enough, everyone arrived and the party started. After dinner, we sang happy birthday. My son blew out all of his candles, and I got a knife out to cut the cake. His eyes widened and he freaked out. He screamed, "Papa, no! Don't cut Isabelle!" My wife looked at me and mouthed that she would go calm him down. I nodded to her and they left the room as I cut the cake for the rest of the guests. This is understandable, right? I'm sure after my wife explains what happened to the cake, he'll be okay. Yeah, that's not what happened. I was curious to try the molding chocolate Isabelle, so I removed her from the cake and placed her on a cutting board. The Isabelle molding was a lot larger than you would think. I cut off her little legs and used my fork to bring the chocolate to my lips, and that's when I heard a blood-curdling scream from my son. "Papa, why are you eating Isabelle?" That's when I realized I messed up. My son thought the chocolate Isabelle was living and breathing. My son walked in on his father cutting and eating his favorite character that he was thoroughly convinced was alive and breathing. My son broke down into tears and held the legless Isabelle in his hands while sobbing his heart out at the dinner table. He received a plush Isabelle from his auntie, and now he refuses to let me touch her, saying anytime I come near it, "Papa's gonna eat her again." So yeah, I'm officially banned from being anywhere near his Animal Crossing collection in fear of me eating their legs. On one side, it's absolutely hilarious. I think if anything, this man created a new core memory for his son. He will definitely never forget this. On the other end of it, this is kind of sad. Thankfully, there was an Animal Crossing plushie to try and take the place of the Isabelle that you just absolutely mutilated. I mean, you chopped it up on a chopping board. You gotta be a little bit more subtle and discreet than that. Overall, this is absolutely hilarious, and I died laughing about 12 times while trying to read this. Today, I messed up by taking a gel capsule before running an errand. Yes, this did actually happen today. So I take a medicine that comes in gel capsules every morning. It's filled with a blue liquid, and it's about the size of a black bean, so it's pretty big. This morning, I took it right before leaving to drop the dog off at her playgroup, which is about a 10-minute drive. I take the medicine, wash it down with a few gulps of water from my water bottle, and I head out the door with the dog. Simple enough. About 2 minutes into the drive, one of my sinuses starts hurting. You know that sinus holes at the back of your mouth? I'm not sure of their technical name, but I don't know what else it is. Those start burning. One of them specifically starts burning like I poured lemonade back there or something, because it was messing up my sinuses. So far, it's not too bad, just really annoying, especially since I left my water bottle at home. 2 minutes later, and it's burning really badly, and there's a horrible taste in my mouth. That's when I realized I somehow managed to snort the gel gel capsule into my sinuses, where it is now dissolving the gel cap and releasing the medicine. Now, since this medicine comes in a gel cap, the liquid inside is not treated in any way to disguise the flavor or mitigate the burning sensation in my mouth, so it tastes and feels like I would imagine battery acid would taste and feel like. We are now almost at the daycare drop-off, and I managed to get the dogs inside. My nose and eyes are streaming. Thank God I had a face mask in the car, and I run back to my car, intending to get home as fast as possible. The drive home was the longest 10 minutes of my life, including labor with 2 kids. I cried all the way home. It burned so badly, and since your sinuses go throughout your whole freaking head, various parts of my head are burning at various points, including the tubes leading to my ears. Of course, the usual drive home is also complicated by the fact that it's start time for the high school, which is between our house and the doggy daycare, and dozens of teenagers are wandering across the streets without looking, all while I'm attempting to drive. And I can now barely see because of the constant stream of liquid coming from my nose and eyes. I literally at one point had the thought, I'm gonna pass away. I'm going to unalive and be a headline. I'm going to win a Darwin Award. 40-year-old woman with multiple graduate degrees somehow manages to unalive herself by snorting an over-the-counter medicine in the form of a gel capsule. Story at 6. All this flashed through my head. And the traffic going into the school is taking forever to move. Finally, I make it home. I dash into the house, shedding my possessions left and right. I run to the kitchen thinking just one thing. I need to find a way to flush my sinuses. I don't have a neti pot, so I dug through a kitchen drawer and grabbed a turkey baster. I sucked up ice water from my water bottle and shot it up my sinuses as hard and as fast as I could, until a partially dissolved gel capsule falls out of my face hole and the burning decreases marginally. Even 3 hours later, I'm still swallowing fluid that tastes like medicine as it drains out of my sinuses. It is really gross, and I'm just happy that the burning sensation has gone away. That sounds like an absolute nightmare. I don't know why you didn't stop at the doggy daycare and ask them for some water or something. And yeah, I think you're right. That would qualify as a Darwin Award. I think the dumbest thing I've done that comes close to that is driving home after having my eyes checked and dilated. That was a nightmare and the biggest mistake of my life. So I totally understand what you mean when you're going past a school and you're like, oh no, this might be it. So be careful the next time you take your medicine, because you could very well light your sinuses on fire and ruin your day. An entitled Karen demands that I give my plane tickets to her as well as her child. So this happened in 2019. I was about to turn 18, so my parents gave me money. I always had wanted a fursuit, so of course I ordered one. Furry Migration 2019 was September 6th, so me and my friends were going to Virginia Beach. My neighbor had a kid that turned 7 the previous month, and the problem was that the kid was very annoying, and equally so, his mother was an absolute Karen. My neighbor's special child loved to make sandcastles, and the International Sand Sculpting Championship would be also taking place in Virginia Beach on September 27th. I don't know how she knew I had tickets, probably because my parents told her, but one day I was taking my dog for a walk when this entitled Karen came up to me and was like, "So, you were going to Virginia Beach, right?" So I just said, "Yes, I am." And I didn't tell her that it was for a furry migration because God knows how that might have gone over. When I tried to walk away, she actually stopped me and said, "Could you give me your tickets? My baby boy wants to see the sand sculpting championship." And I honestly was just so confused. I answered her by saying, "Excuse me, I bought these tickets with the money I was given as well as my own money. If you want tickets, go buy them yourself." After I said this, the entitled Karen was furious. She just looked at me completely enraged and walked back into her house. 2 days later or so, the woman came to me again and asked again for the tickets. So basically a repeat of the last time I shut her down. But this time I wasn't quite in the mood for that. So I just said, "Listen, I've waited for this since 2011, and I won't let it go just because your kid wants to see some stupidly complex sand sculptures." The mother was raging at me at this point, and she told me, "My child is more special than you. I will get those tickets by any means possible. I will call the police and tell them you stole those tickets from me." I thought she was crazy, but no, she really did call the police. About 2 hours passed until the police actually arrived, and of course, the entitled Karen lied about the tickets. The police officer then asked if he could see the tickets. And as it was clearly seen on the ticket, my name was all over it. But still, this entitled Karen lied again, trying to tell the police officer that this was her husband's name. Unfortunately for this Karen, the kid came up to her and the cop asked him for his full name. And at that point, the Karen was finished. We live in Mexico, and your last names are your father's first last name as well as your mother's first last name. And obviously, my last name didn't match with whatever he was saying. Because of all of this, the mother got a 2,000 peso fine for lying to the police and trying to steal. Despite everything, at the end, I did go to the convention, which would be my first one with a fursuit. And to this day, I will never forget that entitled Karen and her stupid child. It is absolutely crazy to me that someone would call the police and try to lie to the police over something like this. It is horrible that this lady tried to use the police to get this kid's plane tickets to Virginia Beach just so they could see some stupid sandcastles. Like, honestly, who does that? Who's so unhinged that they would try and lie to the police and get you in trouble just to get those tickets? Why not just buy them yourself and stop hassling other people? It's such a weird thing to do. Also, how does this Karen not know that tickets can't be transferred like that? Like, you can't just work the system and try and take someone else's plane ticket and try and go to another country like that. Like, there's gonna be checks and balances along the way. This Karen was clearly unhinged and absolutely out of it, because any rational human being would know that you can't do that. So good for this person for standing up for themselves and not allowing some weird Karen to try and walk all over them. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own stories. A lady tries to steal $2,000 worth of prepaid credit cards. When I worked at a popular supermarket just before the pandemic took off, this lady wanted to buy several $200 credit cards, all with $20 bills. I thought it was odd to pay in such small bills, but didn't worry about it too much. After counting it out herself, she would hand me the money so I could also count it. And when I finished, she'd ask to see the money back, which was also kind of weird, and I still didn't know why she was doing that. Then with a sleight of hand, she'd skim off some of the bills off the bottom of the stack really quickly. I sort of noticed at first, but thought I was seeing things and didn't want to cause any issues, so I just took the money. If that had been the only transaction, she might have gotten away with it, but luckily we were doing 2 purchases, and I definitely noticed this second time, especially as I recounted the money. I realized that even when counting the whole register's worth of money, there wouldn't have been enough bills in there to cover the first purchase of the cards. When I tried telling the lady that there was not enough money, she acted confused and pretended like she couldn't speak English, even though she was speaking fine earlier. Anyhow, a coworker was in my line, so I got her attention and let her know that there was an issue. So I asked her to grab a supervisor to let them know the situation as well. The lady was still standing there, and I'm kind of surprised she didn't try running. After a bit of time, the lady got off easy. She finished her purchase of the second set of credit cards and made her way out of the store, having paid the full price for the set. Unfortunately, at the time, we couldn't prove that she skimmed money off the pile of bills, so she basically got away with the first set of stolen credit cards. Later, the security footage was reviewed, and they confirmed she skimmed the money, but it was far too late at that point. I asked what was going to happen with her, and I was told that they would put a picture of her up and send a copy to our sister locations to warn them of a potential scammer. I wasn't punished because I did catch her early, and I stopped the second sale from being scammed, and that was honestly the end of that. After that, we never saw her again. That's a crazy story, to be completely honest. I have worked in retail as well as customer service, and this is one of the things they train you to look out for, at least when I was working in that kind of industry. You have to keep an eye out for someone trying this on you because it's a lot easier than you really think. Someone could very easily practice this and take money from you and completely ruin your drawer at the end of the day. If you're unfamiliar or if you haven't worked in this kind of environment before, your drawer at the end of the day is counted to make sure everything's accounted for. If there's any money off, you have to do a deep search and figure out where you messed up. And trust me, that is not a fun feeling. And if the drawer is somehow off, then guess what? That can potentially come out of your paycheck. So you always want to make sure you're getting and receiving the proper amount of money. It honestly kind of sucks that this lady didn't get caught in the end, but honestly, what can you do? But the fact that they put her picture up all over their store, as well as letting sister locations know that, hey, there's a scammer out there that's using sleight of hand to try and get money from you, is really, really good, because you know what? That's the best you can do in this kind of situation. And honestly, good for this employee for catching this in the first place. This is really, really easy to miss if you're not careful. So hopefully this lady never comes back to that store again. And if she does, I really hope she gets caught red-handed and prosecuted for stealing from the store. I caught my boyfriend cheating, and he told me that he still wants to keep our relationship going, and I honestly don't know what to do. As a bit of backstory, me and my boyfriend have always had a very bro-ish way of talking to each other. We call each other all kinds of things like home slice and brother. The way I talk has always been closer to being one of the boys, if you know what I mean. We honestly both really enjoy it, and our mutual friends get a kick out of it, so it always gets a good laugh. We have been dating for about a year now, after being friends for a while first, and things have been going really well, or at least so I thought. About a week ago, he left the city we both live in to visit his parents a few hours away. No biggie, pretty normal thing to do for the most part. He was staying for a few days, and one night I called him just to chat. His phone rang a few times before he picked up, only he didn't pick up. Instead, his phone was in his pocket, and it must have answered by accident. All I heard was the sound of him kissing someone else and other noises, if you know what I mean. I'll spare you the details, to be honest. My jaw dropped. I was in shock. I didn't say anything or hang up, I just waited. After a few more minutes, he must have been going to take off his pants or something and took the phone out of his pocket, where I assume he saw it was currently on a call with me. There was a silent stillness for a few seconds before I heard him whisper my name under his breath. He giggled quietly and said, "Ah well, cope and seethe," before hanging up the phone. I was so confused. I just sort of sat there for a while on my bed until I fell asleep. The next day, I woke up to a missed call from him. When I called him back, he asked me if I had heard anything on the phone last night. I confirmed the things I had heard, and in the most mature, logical tone my voice could muster at the moment, I asked him if this was it, and if he was done with the relationship. He said, and I quote, "Nah, I still want to date you. You've been kind of falling off recently, so I've been messing around a little. Hope that's cool." I get that our relationship is very casual, but how far is too far? He is normally fun and kind, but this just seemed too much. Would it be overreacting to break up with him over this? What do I do? If I was in your shoes, this would be a complete deal breaker. There's no way I would allow my significant other to cheat on me like that and then try and act like it's super casual. Like, there's other things you can be super casual about, but this is not one of them. This is a huge betrayal of trust. There's no way on earth I would allow that to slide. And most of all, he's so disrespectful about it. It's like he doesn't even care about the current relationship he's in. He's just using you. Like, from what you've described, it sounds like he doesn't even feel bad about cheating on you. It sounds like he thinks that you're gonna be okay with this in some way, which honestly, I wouldn't if I was in your shoes. If you did stay with someone like this, what kind of future would you have? That would be honestly a nightmare to deal with. You could never trust this guy with anything. So best of luck with whatever kind of relationship you're looking to have with this guy, and hopefully you're able to see that you can do a lot better than this guy casually cheating on you. My best friend is chronically late, and I'm honestly not sure how to deal with this. Well, the title says it all, and I really mean it. My friend is chronically late, 30 minutes to an hour late. Last time we were supposed to hang out, he was an hour and a half late, which is a lot even for me. His excuse was that his brother needed his help with moving some furniture, and that he had to do that for an hour. Then it took another half hour to get where I was, and he didn't take this into account. But he always has convenient excuses for why he's late. And I'm not heartless here. Things come up, I get it, sure. And being late now and again is only human. But my friend has been late every time for the past 2 years. Not even joking. The reason why I remember this is because I was so surprised when he was on time once. It just simply never happens. The thing is, he is one of my best friends and a genuinely sweet person, which is why our friendship has lasted. I love him like a brother, but I'm starting to feel like he's taking me for granted. Our friend group used to be larger, but his relationship with the others has fallen apart, in part because of the fact that he's always chronically late. He clearly likes and cares for all of us, but he doesn't respect our time, and because of this, he's built up a reputation for being untrustworthy. So I really want to help him with this, not only for my own convenience and sanity, but also because I know that he will keep on ruining his friendships if he doesn't improve on this. So I'm not sure what to do. Is it wise for me to even bring this up to him at all and to expect him to actually change? Or should I learn to just let this go? Has anyone ever actually dealt with something like this before? What should I do? This does not sound like a very good friend in my opinion, and I completely understand why your other friends have kind of kicked him to the curb. Not respecting someone else's time and being an hour and a half late is unbelievably inconsiderate. For me, that's a complete lack of caring as well as a complete lack of respect for the person you're dedicated to. And by dedicated to, I mean you've made plans with them, there's some kind of of mutual expectation that you're going to show up. And when you don't honor that, that loses trust immediately. I can understand some things coming up where you're like, hey, I have to try and do this thing real quick, or hey, an emergency popped up. That's understandable. But when it's been happening for 2 years and you still have not told them about this or done anything to try and fix the problem, then honestly, you're just kind of walking into it at that point. We have cell phones nowadays. There's literally no good excuse, in my opinion, to be an hour and a half late, even 2 hours at some point, to anything. At that point, you might as well not even show up. Anything past 15 minutes and I'm like, all right, they're just not showing up. There are tools available that this person could use that would help them get things going, like, I don't know, an alarm clock. Conveniently enough, your phone has an alarm on it that you could set saying, hey, you need to leave now. To try and help the situation, I mean, you could start lying to your friend about the time at which you're meeting up. Instead of actually meeting up at 10, you could be like, hey, we're meeting up at 8:30, and then just hope he shows up at 10. But even then, that's super unfair for you. You shouldn't have to lie to your friend just to try and have some semblance of a friendship with them. So I wish you the best of luck in figuring this one out, but I can tell you right now, if your friend doesn't want to change, no amount of help on your end is going to make them show up on time. Because I can tell you personally, if someone was an hour and a half late to something that I was planning, I would just leave and probably not want to deal with them ever again. And I would almost hope that they would complain that I left them, because I would then go into it and be like, hey, we were supposed to be there an hour and a half ago and you didn't show up. So yeah, in my opinion, you don't really need that kind of energy in your life, and you could do a lot better with people who actually want to show up, as well as respect your time and your energy. Today I messed up by driving 2 hours for my best friend's gender reveal. My best friend is currently pregnant with her second child, and her aunt is throwing her a gender reveal party. We've been friends since college when she had her first son, but haven't been able to see each other much over the past 5 or 6 years. I'm really excited to see her and her family because now we live in separate states. 2 hours isn't a lot, but she and I have a hard time keeping jobs where we don't work weekends, and I was the only one who could drive until recently. All yesterday morning, I was preparing and making sure that me and my boyfriend were ready before we started making the trek. We weren't planning on staying the night because we have pets, but it was going to be a long afternoon regardless. My boyfriend isn't a fan of social situations, especially ones where he doesn't really know anyone, but he loves me very much, and I make it up to him in other ways to show him how much I appreciate it. The ride was nothing abnormal, driving major highways and spending way too much on gas and tolls, all before we finally get to the small street she lives on. I'm slowly driving along and notice there isn't a whole lot going on. We arrived right on time, so I thought maybe we were just some of the first people to show up, but the street was very unoccupied by cars, and I hear no sort of party. I go up to the house, not really sure what to do, so I just ring the doorbell. She definitely has one of those camera-based doorbells, so being the awkward person that I am, I try not to look directly into the camera. I consider myself a polite person, so I waited a few minutes before calling my best friend to see where I was supposed to go, and because she's a wonderful human being, she answers right away. But there's something very clear in her voice. She was definitely sleeping, and that's when it hit me. I was a week early to the gender reveal party. I started laughing, and my boyfriend was face palming with a silent laugh. My best friend was trying to make me feel less like an idiot, and I apologized more than I ever have in my life, whilst trying not to cry. My best friend was taking a nap, and because I don't want to take a pregnant woman from her nap, those being my exact words, I decided it would be best to drive home. I am a very emotional person, and while I know this is going to be the funniest story to tell later, I still cried half the drive home. We decided to go out for dinner since I had gotten dressed up and went to our favorite brewery nearby for food and craft beer. There was a large group with a lot of preteen boys whom were running around as preteen boys do, and halfway through our meal, one of the dads at the table bought me and my boyfriend another drink as a thank you for dealing with his kids. I admit we were both kind of tipsy when we left to go home, but the brewery is very close to our house and we take a lot of back roads to get there anyways. We got home, my boyfriend feeds the pets, I lay down on the bed where I promptly fell asleep until about 1 in the morning. Somewhere in there, my boyfriend came in to cuddle with me, as well as to wake me up, but I am a bad influence and somehow managed to suck him into sleeping with me. I woke up very dehydrated, my makeup all over my face, and my eyes in pain from sleeping with my contacts in. Overall, it's been a rough day. That is a rough day. Driving 2 hours to a party that isn't happening until a week later is a terrible feeling. I can't imagine how awkward that must have been at the doorstep when your friend had to explain, hey, that's not till next week. Hopefully all parties involved agree that this never happened and that they will never discuss this, because that is horribly embarrassing. So hopefully the gender reveal party goes well next week, and hopefully it doesn't get canceled cancel without you knowing, because that would be super hilarious, but also super tragic. Today I messed up when I tried to high-five a girl on the street, and boy did it not go well. Last night I went out for dinner with a girl I met online. The two of us were done with each other by the time the bill arrived. We had zero chemistry in person. I was so disappointed that I decided to walk home instead of calling an Uber. I live in a city that loves to celebrate on the weekends, so the walk did a good job of distracting me from overthinking my disappointing date. The streets were busy too. The clubs were absolutely packed and all of the restaurants that I saw were full. Along the way, I noticed an attractive girl standing outside one of the popular pubs. I assumed she was either under the influence or high, or both based on the way she was staring at the night sky and smiling. It was none of my business, and I was prepared to just walk past her without reacting, but as soon as I was close enough, she randomly raised her hand like she was waiting for me to high-five her. Not being one to let a high-five go to waste, I did what I thought she wanted and I high-fived her. The moment our hands connected, she unexpectedly pulled me in for a hug and literally squeezed me like we were reunited after Thanos snapped us out of existence. It was unbelievably random, but considering how I was feeling after my date, I accepted the warm embrace of an attractive girl who may or may not have been on another planet mentally at the moment. Less than 5 seconds into the hug, I got pulled away by an aggressive guy who then headbutted me. For some reason, the girl was still holding on to my hand and ended up going down with me as I fell to the ground. The aggressive guy also lost his balance somehow and landed on top of me. Based on the number of times he said ouch back to back, it was safe to say the headbutt hurt both of us. A group of random strangers from the pub intervened before things could escalate. I was picked up and pulled in one direction while the aggressive guy and the girl was being pulled in another direction. From what I could hear through the noise, the aggressive guy was under the impression that his girlfriend, aka the hugger, needed to be rescued from the creep on the street who, guess what, apparently was me. Thus the guy headbutted me in the head. The girlfriend was an unreliable witness because she had no idea who I was or what was happening. So there I was, not only trying to recover from a headbutt, but also trying my best to make the aggressive guy understand that his girlfriend made the first move. The aggressive guy got even more aggressive after that because apparently I made it sound like his girlfriend was just trying to mess around with another guy. That was not my intention at all, but the damage was pretty much already done. The aggressive guy basically threatened my life, so at that point I got scared and I ran away. What a weird story, as well as a weird thing to get angry over. Like, your girlfriend is very clearly under the influence and is hugging random people on the street. Like, that's not the fault of the guy that high-fived her. But also in that same thought, yeah, you probably should not have high-fived the random drunk girl staring at the sky. Like, that's probably not the best decision. I don't think he could have possibly predicted that she was going to hang on to him like she's a leech, which would then result in him getting headbutted in the forehead. But I mean, here we are. When it really came down to it, there was no winning that situation. That guy was probably going to be mad at this guy walking by pretty much no matter what. So there's no point in trying to fight a drunk guy who's clearly under the influence and is just going to be super aggressive no matter what. I think his response of running away was probably the best solution for this situation. So the moral of the story is, don't high-five people you don't know, because there might be a boyfriend waiting around the corner ready to headbutt you. My entitled little brother steals my mini bike and goes for a joyride, all while my parents sit by and do nothing to stop him. It got so bad that I nearly called the police. When I was 17, I bought a used mini bike and used it to get to and from a part-time job. My little brother is something else. He was the boy that my parents extra coddled because he was diagnosed as high-functioning autistic. And anything I had, my brother had to have too. And if I refused to give it to him, my parents generally just took it from me. At least until that behavior was exposed to the public, when my parents tried to cancel my 14th birthday. After that, my parents stopped forcing me to give my stuff to my brother whenever he wanted. And that led to some extra huge tantrums from him. My brother would look for things around the house to throw to the floor and to break. Usually dishes, to be honest. My parents actually stocked up on plates from secondhand stores because of that. Crazy stuff if you think about it. When I got the mini bike, my brother was upset I wouldn't let him take it for a ride. But he's destructive with all of my stuff. Every time he broke his BMX, I'm the one who had to fix it. Change a flat, new pedals, new tire, new handlebars, new brake line. It's all up to me. He's got a stunt BMX that he begged for, and my parents spent hundreds on it. But as much as he loves it, he never fixes it himself or properly takes care of it. He just calls me over begging me to fix it. My parents got him the parts and the tools, but he never bothers to do anything more than pumping up a tire. And even then, he usually tries to get someone to do it for him. He's also very careless in where he leaves the bike. He left it in a neighbor's driveway driveway once, and its handlebars got run over by the neighbor's van. He somehow destroyed the pedals, and a new pair had to be put on. He even broke the rear brake line, all while having a tantrum. The tire was understandable though, since those tend to wear out easily. But it wasn't hard to swap it, and I shouldn't have to come over on a Saturday to do it when my brother is perfectly capable of doing it himself. So the answer is absolutely no. I'm not letting him take my mini bike on a joyride, especially with gas prices being so high these days. The mini bike gets 60 miles per gallon. It can only really go 40 miles an hour, and I have a 5-mile commute anyways. About a month before my brother's 14th birthday, my parents called me begging me to come over and fix the BMX again. My bratty little brother had once again worn down the rear tire to its threads. I was absolutely annoyed, but I came over anyway because they offered to pay me. I swapped the tire and I sat down for a bottle of water because it was like 100 degrees out that day. My brother watched me work on the bike till I was done. His helmet was on, so I figured he was just waiting to go for a ride on his bike. But the moment my back was turned, I heard my mini bike start up outside and then take off. My little brother took off like a rocket down the street before I could get out of the garage and try and stop him. I freaked out, but my parents tried to play it off. Though when I didn't placate them, they said they'd get my mini bike back right away. But for them, that was more like just waiting till my brother came back with it. I was annoyed and I kind of wanted to call the police, but I'm not sure if they'd call it a domestic issue or not. My brother finally came back an hour later. He'd somehow not crashed, which is honestly just a miracle. But the moment he saw me, he took off again. He drove the bike till it ran out of gas, and my parents had to go get him. To say I was furious was an understatement, but my parents basically rolled their eyes, handed me $40, and claimed it wouldn't happen again. I said it better not, or I'm gonna call the police next time. I wasn't sure if it would help, but they definitely took my warning to heart. I had to push my mini bike to the nearest gas station to fill up before I could even go home. Before I left, I told my parents that if my brother wants a mini bike so bad, then they should get him one themselves. But then they pulled a 180 and said he wasn't ready to have one because it's a big responsibility, and that it was too dangerous because it's practically a motorcycle. I mean, really? They just let him steal mine for 2 hours to go joyriding to God knows where, and they don't want him to get one themselves? Whatever. I'm honestly used to their hypocrisy by this point. The last time I went to my parents' house, my brother was massively grounded and in his room. But just to be sure, I pulled the spark plug wire off my bike before I entered the house. My brother was glaring at me from his window when I left. I just gave him a goofy wave and drove off. What a crazy story. The fact that the parents just let this happen and allowed this stupid little brother to go joyriding on a mini bike is crazy. If you're not familiar with driving on a mini bike, let me tell you, they can go fast and they can go fast very quick. So if you're not ready, you could fall and really hurt yourself. So it's a miracle that this bratty 14-year-old didn't bust his head open or something. And the fact that his parents did absolutely nothing to stop this from happening speaks volumes to the type of parents they are. They would much rather try to coddle this annoying, entitled little brat instead of trying to give back the property to their son, who is clearly not happy that it got stolen. So hopefully stuff like this doesn't happen again, and hopefully that kid can grow up and become a better person, because stealing somebody's mini bike just to go on a joyride will only eventually lead to you getting arrested by the police. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for not shaking the other team's hand after they taunted us the entire game? This happened about a year ago. I used to play football in a community league. Towards the end of our season, we played this one team called the Cowboys. The Cowboys absolutely beat us down. I'm talking 48-0 kind of beat down. It was so bad that the toughest player on our team was crying at halftime. Saying we were humiliated was an understatement. After the game was over, we were supposed to line up in the middle of the field and shake hands. The Cowboys, though, had other plans. When we were all lined up, they grabbed their team flag and started running down the entire length of the field, screaming, "You guys suck!" We were obviously very pissed. My coach, who I'll call Coach Woods, that's not his real name, decided we would not shake their hands after this display of unsportsmanlike behavior. So we waited until they finally decided to line up to shake our hands, and then we turned around and walked away. My coach said, "We're not going to bow down to them." That's when our quarterback's Karen mom comes running onto the field. She starts cussing out the coach and screaming at him in front of everyone. Everyone was mumbling about how she was a Karen while she was doing it too. She ended up making her son go and shake the other team's hand. I agreed with the coach, but my family did not. Also, the league did nothing about it. No suspensions, no warnings, Nothing. So what do you think? Am I the jerk for not shaking the other team's hand? There's no way on earth I would have gone anywhere near that other team except for some kind of physical altercation. It's one thing to win a game and absolutely get destroyed and then you end the game and that's it. It's another thing to win the game and then talk trash viciously to the other team that you just end up beating. That is a terrible look, and whoever's the coach on that team should 100% be fired. How on earth do you let your players do that and think it's okay to then line up and shake hands? I wouldn't want to shake their hands. I don't know many people who would want to shake their hands. In my opinion, the Karen mom as well as your family are complete morons. They were not in that game. They did not get beat down 48-0. And they are also not the people who got trash talked by the enemy team. Like, that's just not fair. It's one thing to watch the sport. It's a whole nother thing to be in the sport. Like, if your team won a really close game, celebrate by all means. But beating a team 48-0 is hardly a reason to try and rub it in their face that you beat them. It's completely unwarranted. Like, clearly it's just an unbalanced team, and it wasn't even close. If it was a closer game, and there really was a back and forth, then trash talk, in my opinion, is completely warranted. But in this case, it's just petty, and it's just disgusting. It's also really disturbing that the league did nothing about it. Don't they have some kind of rules or regulations about player conduct? I don't know about you, but getting in the other team's face that you just destroyed, cussing them out, and saying these terrible things is in no way a good representation of your league. And it's not something I would want in any kind of league that I'm sponsoring. So overall, you didn't do anything wrong. I think the coach was smart about saying we're not going to shake hands with them. And I think that Karen mom as well as your parents are absolutely not getting it. Because at the end of the day, respect is a two-way street. And if you're expecting to get it from somebody, you better give it to them in the first place. An entitled Karen wants to return a reusable face mask. And after not getting her way, she threatens to call the cops. So this happened last year. I was working in this retail store and we have a limited time to return items, which is just 1 week. But for reusable face masks, of course we don't accept returns, and we don't give refunds for that. It should be pretty obvious. This is clearly stated also before the purchase, and there's a sign outside so people don't have the excuse of saying they don't know our return policy. So one day, this lady comes and demands that we give her a new face mask because this one didn't fit. I told her that we don't accept return items that were used, and we will never accept a used face mask back to our store. She goes off and gets incredibly angry and starts interrupting me while I'm helping other clients. It was also during the weekend, so it was already pretty busy. Then she, of course, demanded to talk with the owner. Even though I'm one of the 3 employees, I was the one in charge because the owner wasn't there that day. So I guess I'm the manager. But that didn't help because this made her even more angry. After explaining to her why we can't accept the items, she attempts to call the police. Considering that I was just a minor working there part-time, I knew that instead of kicking out this Karen, the cops would ask why I'm working there. Because it's illegal to work until you're 18 where I'm at. I needed the job, so I just gave her a refund and then she left with her purchase. The owner eventually found out and they totally understood the situation and was really cool about me giving a refund. It wasn't a huge loss, it was just a face mask. Fortunately though, this Karen never came back to our store ever again. That situation really sucks, and I really don't think the cops would have brought up your age at all with this situation. If anything, they probably most definitely would have gotten on this Karen for wasting police time over something so ridiculous. And how would a cop know that you're a minor in the first place unless you say something? Like, in my opinion, you totally should not have let this Karen walk all over you. And I think you got super lucky here, to be completely honest. The owner easily could have fired you for letting that refund go through. And you may be thinking, it'll never happen to me, but trust me, it can and would happen to you. I think overall, it's honestly just really upsetting that people act like this, especially when it comes to items that you know you can't return. Like, who in their right mind is going to want that disgusting, gross face mask that Karen just used? Like, I know for a fact I wouldn't want to be anywhere near that, let alone try to resell that to another customer. That would be terrible. So the moral of the story, in my opinion, is don't let any Karen walk all over you like that. And if they're going to threaten to call the police, let the police show up. Let's see what happens. Because I can guarantee you that when a Karen calls the police over something so trivial, the cops are not going to be on their side. So next time, let it play out and see where it goes. I put my kids first and it hurt my mom's feelings. My family is from Indiana. We moved to Missouri in 2007 and made a life here. My mom decided 2 years ago to uproot that life for herself and 2 of my brothers and go back to Indiana. Currently, both parents and my maternal grandparents live in Indiana. I am a mom of 2 toddlers and happily married and living my best life. I am also number 4 out of 10 kids. This year, the youngest 2 graduated high school, and even though I had zero desire, I went, with my kids, in a van for 10 hours to stay at a hotel for 4 days. Did I mention my husband couldn't take time off, so my only support was my older sister? Well, we get there on a Thursday around 5 in the morning. After we wake up for the day and eat, we load up and go to my mom's house. Her house is under 1,000 square feet and it's full of people. When my van load arrived, it was 13 people in a house without AC. My kids went insane pretty quickly. There was zero form of entertainment for the kids. My stepdad went to the cellar just to find a ball for them to play with. My daughter was quick to ask about going to the pool at the hotel, so that's what we did. We had to go to my dad's pretty quickly, but my kids come first, and there was literally nothing for them to do and no room to even sit down. My mom asked if I'd come back by after my dad's house. I said yes, but by the time we spent the evening there, my daughter was passed out. I was not about to wake her up to go back to my mom's, but apparently this was my first mistake. She said I hurt her feelings. Friday, the day of the graduation, my sister and I promised the kids that we'd go swimming, so that's exactly what we did. I then spent the day getting text messages from my mother as she explained to me that I didn't come here to swim. My mom's house was less than 10 minutes from the hotel, and she knew what our plan was. But again, I hurt her feelings because I didn't back out of my promises to my kids. Saturday was kind of boring, to be honest. I don't even remember doing anything besides dropping some money for my kids to have toys, so I could spend some time at my mom's without being outside alone and my kids kicking a ball around. Sunday, my dad drove an hour out of his way to come to the hotel and spend time with me and the kids. An hour. Plus he had work, which was 30 minutes back towards his house. I spend some more time with my mom and then I go back to the hotel to pack. Monday morning, we're getting ready to leave and my son is pulling me to the van and asking for daddy. He was having a meltdown and fast. He really wanted to go home that bad. So that's what we did. On the way home, I got an epically long email saying basically I was selfish because I didn't stop and say goodbye to my mom. She knew where we were. It would have taken her very little effort to drive over and say goodbye. She said that she isn't coming to visit us when she goes on summer vacation because we obviously don't want to see her. After seeing that, I didn't respond. A few days later, I get a message from a different sister saying mom's coming in on Monday. I had to listen to her complain about how I hurt her feelings months ago because she came by on the way through town and my kids weren't home. She knew they wouldn't be. I even told her that they wouldn't be there. Then she listed everything I did wrong the entire trip, which was basically not putting her first the entire time. Sorry, mom, but my kids come before anyone else. She then left my house for her summer vacation without waiting for my sister and her husband to get to the house. Ironically enough, she decided not to wait to see them or to say goodbye. What a nut job. I mean, what kind of person would expect you to put her before your kids? Like, if your kids are bored or if they've got something going on, guess what? You go with your kids. Like, don't get me wrong, mom and dad are super important. I get it. But your kids are very vulnerable human beings, and they deserve just as much, if not more, love and attention than anyone else would. The fact that your mom would come by your house just to complain and to make it sound like this trip was all about me and you didn't do anything about it is just really entitled and really gross. Because honestly, acting like that is just going to push your family away. It's not going to make anyone want to be around you, and definitely in this case, it's going to make sure that your daughter never comes back to your house ever again. My girlfriend of 4 years, who I've been supporting through an abusive marriage, cheated on me and secretly moved the guy into her house. I've been seeing this girl for 4 years. As of yet, we haven't come public with a relationship, as when I met her, she was still married, but no longer in a relationship with her husband. We both agreed that we are boyfriend and girlfriend in everything but public, due to the impact it could have on her divorce. When we first started seeing each other, he had fully moved out. However, a few months in, he moved back in as his living situation fell through, and as their house was co-signed, she couldn't stop him. For the last 4 years, we've been working towards being together and getting him out of her life. However, in this time, he's been really terrible to her, to the point where she's wanted to harm herself. She didn't feel that she could move out because she didn't feel her pets would be safe with him, and didn't want to go to the police because she didn't feel she could emotionally take the court. Then COVID happened, which slowed and exacerbated everything. We both love each other and agree that as soon as she gets rid of her ex, we are going to be together and pretty soon move in together. Her ex moved out of the house last September, but we've still kept things under wraps for various reasons related to stopping him coming after her money. Last year, I feel her distance distancing herself from me. Nothing immediately noticeable, but she seems less up for doing things physically, as well as us just meeting up less. Overall and in general, she seems to be getting colder to me and not replying to my text messages. Since the turn of the year, I've seen her less than monthly because she says that she's always just too stressed and needs to be alone due to her mental health. After driving past hers in February when she said she was out, I noticed a new car in her driveway. I texted her about it and she says it's her neighbor's son's car and she has let them use her driveway when theirs is full. I trusted her and I took her word for it. A few weeks ago, she doesn't reply to anything I send her at all day. I haven't seen her in person since April due to the above situation, so I drive out to hers and the house is empty, but her car is still in the driveway. I drive around the block and come back 5 minutes later and the neighbor's son's car that she mentioned before is in the driveway and her curtains are closed. Suspecting that something was up, I log into her Facebook. I know this isn't okay, but I was at the end of my tether. I've had her password, which she gave me for months, and have never done anything with it because I trusted her. I log into her Facebook and I find messages from a former friend in October where she is essentially arranging to have some quality time with this person right after we got back from a weekend away together. On top of that, there are more messages from another friend in 2020 where they arranged to meet up just to see what happens. I look up person number 1 and the neighbor's son's car is actually his, so she lied about that completely. I am absolutely devastated, so I end up confronting her. She refuses to speak to me in person and she says she mentally can't handle it. She has promised me that we'll talk about it, but that she can't do it right now because of her current mental state. I love her and would never force her to do anything that would put her in that mental space, but it's been 3 weeks and she's canceled this talk over 10 times. She says that she was just flirting with the guy in 2020 as she was just in a terrible place and wanted attention, but never met up with him and nothing happened. As for the other guy, she admits to spending some quality time with him, but says it was just a one-time mistake when she was in a dark place. Since the start of the year, she says he's been living in her spare room to help her with rent whilst his house is getting work done. She swears nothing has happened since October and that she still loves me and wants to be with me. The thing is though, when I drove past a few times since then, the blinds and curtains in her spare room are open. The sun rises at 4:30 in the morning at the moment, so I find it hard to believe anyone is sleeping in there. When I put this to her, she essentially said, how he sleeps is his business and it's up to him. He's not sleeping in my room. I still love her and I want to trust her, but I don't see how I can at the moment. Am I being stupid? The loss of trust for her, as well as not getting any closure from being able to see her explain things face to face, is killing me. She swears nothing is going on and he hasn't slept in her bed at all and nothing has happened since that one mistake. I knew about him before and she's always said he's never the sort of person she would ever want to be with, and it was just a physical thing between them when she was single. I'm honestly at a loss for words and I'm just not sure where to take this. You need to wake up and move on, in my opinion. This lady is absolutely using you. She wants to have some man that she slept with in her own house while still having a relationship with you. She has clearly been lying to you for years. It's time to grow up and move on. You asked the question, am I being stupid? In my honest opinion, if you stay with this lady, yes, you're being very stupid. It is genuinely time to cut this parasite out of your life. You can do so much better than this. If I was in your shoes, there's no way I would ever want to be in a relationship with someone who blatantly lies to me, as well as entertains the idea of getting with people in her past just because she's feeling depressed. And you know for a fact that her using the excuse of, oh, I'm just not in a good mental state right now, I can't talk at the moment, as well as her canceling 10 times to try and talk to you in person, is more than enough evidence that not only A, does she feel guilty about this, but B, she knows for a fact that she cannot confront you about this, and that she will 100% be in the wrong. It sucks. It really does that she has replaced you and completely moved in a different direction without you. But you need to accept that and move on. There is no point in trying to hang on to a relationship that this woman has clearly abandoned. So yeah, in my opinion, it's time to move on, because this is completely unfair for you and you can honestly do so much better. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.